Hello to all of our listeners in podcast land, and welcome to episode 4 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, recorded November 16th, 2015. Joining me this evening, we have Tyler, the co-host and co-founder of the International Liberty or Death podcast. Tyler has been shooting for 9 years as a casual and sport shooter and hunter. He identifies politically as a libertarian. And a man who needs no introduction but gets one on every episode, Sean Bevins. He's been very active in the firearms community and is a freedom-loving lobbyist and political activist. And I'm your host, Andrew. I'm an instructor, gear reviewer at everydaytactical.com, competitive shooter, and gun club director. We'd like to hear your feedback about the show. Please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. And we'll start with Sean. Sean was out hunting last week. How was that?
Populations are down. And I was, obviously I speak with a lot of people every day, and I've been talking to guys in Ontario, and we're all kind of experiencing the same thing. I mean, the white-tailed deer population in Eastern Canada is devastatingly low. I know that problem in Quebec, it's been that the Union de Producteurs Agricoles, which is the farmers' union here, has been complaining with Transport Quebec, and they've kind of lobbied the provincial government here to give dual tags. You have to harvest a doe, and then you can harvest a buck, and they've done that over the last couple of years. And then we had a couple of really not necessarily hard winters in terms of cold, but lots of snow cover that really kind of hindered the deer's movement to be able to winter and to browse, and a lot of deer starved to death. I was just talking to a friend of mine in Muskoka, and he said that there was a guy out on Lake Joe in Muskoka that actually found 25 deer dead in one spot, like on the ice. So the deer population's way down. Hunting's been really, really tough. I've been seeing, obviously I practice quality deer management. We've been doing that on the properties that I hunt on for many, many years. We pass up small bucks to create a balance in herd age structure, and we harvest a lot of does, and we put in food plots, and we do forest management, all that stuff. And we see a lot of bucks every year, and this year we just weren't seeing the animals that in one particular spot that we've been hunting and managing for many, many years, I would see, an average day anywhere from, maybe 10 to 30, 40 deer. And this year, in the 2 weeks that I hunted it during bow season, I saw 8 deer. So the population is considerably down. But anyway, to get to my hunting story, my wife of 21 years, Karen, has always never really been interested in my hunting. For her, it's kind of an inconvenience. I go off into the woods every fall, and she misses out on time with her husband and family time with the kids. So never really been a huge fan. I brought her out maybe once before, I think, in the last 21 years. And then the other day, she just comes out of the blue and says to me, "I'd like to go sit in a stand with you." And I was like, "All right, yeah, come on, let's go." So we suited her up. It was kind of funny because we had to patchwork together some of the boys' clothes to. My wife's a very small woman, and so we kind of lucked out there. We patched together a patchwork of hunting clothes for my boys, got her all dressed up and suited up, and brought her into. I didn't want to get her up in one of my squirrel nest tree stands because some of them you have to be like a Chinese acrobat to get into. But I brought her to a ground blind, and my wife's really. We're not religious people, but my wife's pretty spiritual, and so she was asking whoever she talks to about getting me a big buck, and so it's an average place, like it's a new property. It's my brother-in-law's place, and my brother-in-law's gone. He kind of lives down in Florida for 6 months of the year, so he's like, "I'm going to be away during hunting season this year," but he says, "I want you to go to my property and take care of it and just make sure that nobody's trespassing and whatever." So I brought her there. He's got a ground blind set up and pretty much a wooden kind of a blind, and so we went in there, and 7:30 in the morning. I'm kind of we've got this opening, and I'm kind of leaning back because I'm a left-handed shooter, and so I couldn't cover all the angles of the blind. So I was kind of hiding behind the door frame, looking towards where I could, on an angle that I could shoot from, and that covers a certain degree of view. And then she was covering kind of the front towards the right-hand side, and she says she looks over at me and she's like, "There's a deer." And in my mind, she's not used to seeing deer, bucks, up close within, 50, 70, 100 yards, right? And for somebody that's not used to seeing them, even like a button buck could look like a big deer, right? So I was just kind of sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. There's a deer there, big deal, right? And then she's like, no, it's a buck, and I'm still like, oh, okay, whatever. Well, he'll come into my field of view and whatever. I didn't want to make any noise, because like I say, I was hiding behind the door, like the door frame. And then all of a sudden, her eyes go like really wide, like loonies, and she's like, and she's going like this with her hands, and I'm like, okay. So I kind of just stuck my one eyeball. I just did a one eyeballer off the side of the door frame, and yeah, he was a good buck. He was a mature buck, heavy body, 220 maybe. Mature deer, probably 4.5-year-old deer. I generally over time I'm not necessarily a trophy hunter, but I want to harvest mature animals, and so I base my judgment off an animal when I see them in the bush or in the wild. I basically base my judgment off of their body structure, the way that their body looks, rather than looking at the antlers. Because sometimes in really thick brush, you're not going to get a chance to see the antlers, but you can always distinguish a 4.5-year-old or a 5.5-year-old deer or a mature male, like a mature buck, from an immature 3.5-year-old. So great big pot belly, short little feet, stubby face, like a beat up looking face, had bags under his eyes, like you could tell right away it's a mature buck. So I plugged him, and he felt like a bag of hammers, and we embraced each other, and there was tears and laughter, and it was I'm getting all welled up again. It was a pretty cool experience. It was a pretty cool experience. She actually she loved it. She found it was just phenomenal. She says the adrenaline rush that I felt, and she said it was a bizarre feeling because when we went to walk over to the animal, she said I felt sadness. And I've never been able to transmit that message to her, to let her know what hunting and what the outdoors does for me and how I feel when you harvest a mature animal. And for the first time in our relationship, she felt exactly what I feel every time that I get the chance to go out and harvest a mature animal. So it was an incredible experience.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Did it get X-rated in the ground blind after that?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Oh, well done. I was curious. What do you use? What firearm do you use?
That one was taken out with my SPS. So,
nice.
308. So that's a gun that I've had for a while, and I used that gun during my furlong course, and I've never been I gotta say this, and not to throw anybody at Remington under the bus, the gun is cheap as hell.
I have 2 of them. I know it's cheap.
Yeah, it's cheap. Mine's all rusty. The finish is worn off. The gun's 3 years old. And I mean, I care for my guns. I put oil on them. I clean them. I take care of them. But the thing is an amazing shooter. To qualify for the furlong course, you have to he puts out a 6-inch target at 600 meters. And that's basically that's kind of the final to the course, the 2-day course of furlong. And I shot incredibly with it. The stock firearm, and it cost me, I got a pretty good deal on it. I think it cost me it was like $500 or something like that. And I kept up all day long with the $5,000 Timberwolves and the Coyotes and the Coyotes, and that little gun. I mean, the precision on it is incredible. It shoots. It's a great shooter. It's a little bit heavy, but I don't know. I like solid firearms. I like that short barrel. It's easy for me to get into a tree stand with it and get out with it, and it runs. I've had some issues with the ejector, as we all have, right? So some guys put those. What are they? They put the Seiko, the Sacco, or the Tika ejector on it, because sometimes when you eject the spent cartridge, it kind of lets go and the cartridge stays inside, especially with hand loads.
Yep.
When you're doing, I do hand loads, right? So I build my own stuff, and sometimes because of the pushes, the first loads that I did, I used Lapua brass, and the Lapua brass, if you pay more money for it, but it's better quality, I get more loads out of it compared to with a Federal brass or something like that. But I had issues, the first load that I did with the Lapua brass, it was, I get a malfunction like that, you could almost do a stovepipe, right? Because especially when we were doing like rapid feed on the furlong course, I'd get double feeds like all the time. That's quite frustrating. I haven't done that upgrade yet. You gotta, but it's really finicky. Like if you keep it really clean, you won't have any issues. But like I say, if guys are shooting hand loads with it and really precise new brass, I've had issues with it. But that's just me.
I've had issues with my 308, not the 243, strangely, but the 308 I've had issues with, and I've had the exact same problem with Savage Axis rifles as well, actually.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's just like anything, right? I think the firearms manufacturers, and again, not to take anything away from anybody, you know, some people build some great products, but I think that we're in an age of consumerism, right? They want you to consume, and I think the gun owners have figured out that you have to build a quality product, but not too high quality product, because we want them to throw the gun away so that they can buy more, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's, the days of the old Savage 110 built in like 1962, those days are gone. Like the quality of an older firearm compared with today's stuff is just, you can't even compare the two. In my opinion, I mean, I'm just like I'm saying, I'm a firearms. I'm a gunny. I'm not a firearms expert by any sense of the word, but you know, I'm just basing that off my own experience.
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience when it comes to like introductory level hunting firearms, like the Axis, for example. But I had both a 223 and a 30-06 when it comes to the Savage Axis, and both guns, the bolts would decock when you were going to load another round, and that happened several times on both rifles. So I knew it was a design flaw. There's no way I got two bad guns. So you know,
go ahead, Tyler. No, go ahead.
No, I was done.
What kind of surprises me about that 700 SPS Tactical is this is a firearm that was designed for law enforcement and for military, right? I mean, it's a very robust gun. It's got that 875 thousandths of an inch or 7/8 bull barrel on it. It's got a Hogue stock on it. I mean, this gun is built for, you know, probably urban tactical long range shooting. I guess that would, I guess that's kind of the type of firearm that I would imagine it's kind of its native workplace. But I can't imagine that they'd actually let this gun go with the issue with those issues. And I had one thing that I don't like about the gun, and I want to do the upgrade to it. And actually, I'm Spath Tactical. I'm actually thinking about building a kit because the one that's out there is just way too expensive. The trigger guard, you know, the Remington 700 trigger guard that you can get, you can put a box magazine.
Yep.
I've had nothing but bad experience with the floor plate that's in the 700. It's absolutely horrible. Yeah. That's
actually my experience as well. My 243 is sitting in a MDT TAC 21 chassis, and that thing feeds beautifully. It's perfect. It's a great gun, and I shoot the SPS Varmint, the one with the 26-inch heavy profile barrel. Great shooter. It's a real pig, so it's maybe not something you want to be carrying all day, but the thing shoots really nicely. Now I have the same gun in 308, but that's just in the regular factory stock, and it's garbage. It's atrocious. I don't know how they could let a product like that out the door. But I was looking at the Magpul Hunter 700 stock because you can get the upgraded box magazine attachment for it to take AICS mags or the P mag that they're going to make for it. So I was interested in that until I saw the price tag.
Yeah, it's like $100, I think, or $500.
Yeah. I was on the waiting list at Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supplies, and they came in, and it's just like, it's unjustifiable right now. Anyway, it's like $400 for the stock and another $150 or something for the detachable box magazine kit.
Yeah,
no thanks.
Pricey.
Yeah, you might as well get the TAC 21 chassis or the the lightweight chassis, the LSS or LCS, whatever it's called, for that kind of money. And then at least it's made in Canada.
Yeah, you know, I'm a minimalist, right? Like I don't know. I'm not about, you know, bling and flashiness and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I guess my personality probably takes up for that. But you know, I want to run a gun the way that it was designed to run and just not have it fail. You know, and it seems absent from the market today unless you know, get into, you know, a firearm like a PGW, but then again, is that within the realm of, is that accessible to the average guy that, I mean, that's the issue.
As long as you got the money to drop on it, right?
Yeah, $6,500, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit much, and yeah, it's out of reach for the average guy, especially guys who typically aren't going to be doing courses with furlong. They're going to be using it once a year, in the bush. It's hard to justify that kind of money.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, and like most guys, somebody, it was funny because somebody was talking to me about our muzzle brakes, and they were like, "Oh, have you tested their Canadian winter and all this stuff?" And like, I'm not the average. I guess I'm not an average hunter in the sense that the time that I spend out there in the outdoors, like I spend a lot of time out there, and in the cold, miserable rain. I mean, you name it. My guns are wet. The case is soaked. I mean, I'm hard on my stuff, and yeah, I want a firearm that I'd love to have. I mean, it's kind of like ever since I saw the like, I know Ross McRudd. He's a really, 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 really good guy from Prairie Gun Works. They build an incredible product. I watched Corey tonight from. It was funny when we did our course. I did it with the Sun Media crew, Faith Goldie, Corey tonight, Bryn. All those folks were there, and it was an amazing experience. And I'm really, grateful that Corey tonight actually invited me over for that. But like, I watched, like, the PGW those firearms take the average guy. Okay, and not to say that Corey tonight, if he's listening to this, hopefully that he's not, because I mean, we're just average guys. We're not, we're not Navy SEALs. We're just regular civilian people that love to shoot. And I watched him perform at a world-class level with that firearm, like, right out of the box. I mean, the product that they build is incredible. But, when I want to take a $5,000 firearm and bring it out in the miserable cold and warm and hot and sun and weather and elements, throw it in the back of the truck, and sometimes you're frustrated when you come out of the bush and the gun kind of goes in the back of the truck real quick or whatever. Would I want to do that, to have that quality of firearm and do that to it? Like I say, it's kind of out of my reach.
Yeah, for sure. Now, to kind of take things back to your deer hunt, what you were saying about the scarcity of deer is exactly my experience too. One of the spots that I hunt is it's open to the public, but it only really sees any hunting pressure during waterfowl season, and I would constantly see tracks all over the place, but this year it's virtually nothing.
Yeah, it's been tough. Like I said, it's funny, I was just having a discussion with my friend from Bracebridge, Ontario, and they hunt pretty hard over there too, and because I was actually hoping that I get an invite to go up there for a bow hunt, because they've got bow season, I think, out until almost the second week of December. So I wanted to go out there and do a bow hunt, and he's like, "Don't even bother coming. There's no deer. We're not seeing any tracks. There's just." So yeah. I think it's an Eastern Canada problem. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine that owns a shop here, and in Quebec you have to actually register your deer. So after you harvest them, you have to go to a government registration station, and you have to give them the age of the deer and all the information around it. Just more government control for really nothing at the end of the day, because they don't use it to obviously responsibly manage the deer herd. Yeah, it's just about money. It's a money grab. That's all it is. I mean, if they were investing, and I'm never ever going to be in agreement with any tax, but at least if they were using the money to reinvest into, youth shooters, opening a special season, gun season for younger shooters, or creating hunting opportunities for younger kids in some of these ZECs or these places that they've got where they've got where kids get access to a quality hunt, I'd be totally on board with it. But they don't use the money for that. They've cut back on game wardens. Quebec hunting here has basically become the Wild West. I mean, you've got guys that it's just totally lawless and whatever. No respect for the game, no respect for the environment, no respect for the forest or the animals. Just a shit show, really. And it's getting considerably worse, obviously. I mean, we're seeing now that the population, it's really dropped. Like, it's remarkable. And that's the thing, right? Some people, it's not necessarily the cold that kills the deer. It can be -60 out there, and if they've got no, look look at places like Peace River, Alberta, where I've hunted there a couple times, and I've hunted all across the American Midwest and all of the Canadian provinces, and these places, some places in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and I mean, minus 40 is the average winter for them, and they've got healthy deer populations. Some places they have really healthy deer populations, but they don't have that snow cover, and that snow cover is really what stops the deer. It's the limiting factor, right? It's what stops them from being able to browse and yard in the winter. Mm-hmm. And if they can't browse and they can't yard and the snow's too deep for them to travel to food sources, they starve to death. So.
Well, I have yet to go out. I can take my bow out probably starting next week.
Oh, good for you.
We'll see what I find. But
yeah, it seems to be a little bit easier after rifle season. You put some apples out and you bait a little bit, and the deer are hungry and they're getting ready for winter, and there's not a lot of browse. And yeah, that's one of the biggest bucks that I've taken. I actually took that one right there on the wall. If you just look at it, you can see it up there and behind me.
Nice.
Yeah, that big buck. He's a 150. I think he's a 158 net is what he measures, and I shot him in Bracebridge, Ontario, with a bow at 8 yards after gun season over a bait.
Nice. Bracebridge is about 90 minutes northeast of me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I got family there actually.
Sounds like it was a pretty productive hunt, at least, Sean. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it was good. Like I said, anytime that I can get in the woods with my wife and my children and my family, or with friends, it's a special time, right? It's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. It's, in my mind, it's a critical part of living the Canadiana, the tradition, right? This country was founded upon the values of hunting, outdoors, fur trading, and the reason why the Europeans settled this place was because we had a wealth in wildlife, and it's a tradition that I passed down to my kids, and yeah, anytime that I can get out with them, it's just an amazing time, and I really enjoy that time. I couldn't imagine my life, quite frankly, without it. And just living that experience with my wife the other day, for the non-hunting person, they don't really give a shit about that. Like, it's whatever, buddy, you're just being emotional. But for me, it was a really special moment for me, and my wife, to be able to, for her to finally understand and take that in of why we do what we do, and why we're so passionate about it. Why does Sean need? Why can't he breathe or live without whitetail deer hunting and spending that time in the woods? And now she really, I think she has a really firm grasp of why I do what I do, and she wants to come back. She wants to come out some more. So that's a great thing.
That is good. We're trying to get my girlfriend out to do turkey hunting this spring, so we'll see how she likes that.
Yeah, well, anytime. Generally, women secretly, they might not openly admit it, but anytime they see a horny male, they generally like that kind of thing. Turkey hunting. If you're in the right spot, you get to see a lot of horny males.
Yeah. I just thought it would be a great way to do it because it's like low investment hunting. Tags are cheap. The game is somewhat plentiful. It's less of a challenging hunt in the sense that you might not be looking at a shot beyond 50 yards. Typically, if you're taking a shot at a turkey at 60 yards, you're really reaching. So I think it'd be something that she would enjoy, and that's the way I've tried to get other people into hunting as well. Kind of touch on one of the topics for today's show is that's how I've gotten a lot of people into gun ownership is by kind of pushing turkey hunting because it's really low investment. You just get a shotgun or a bow, and then you're off. Yeah,
and it's a hunt that, and like you say, you're absolutely right in the sense that you don't have to worry about wind, you don't have to worry about your all that stuff, right? Turkeys, as long as you sit still and you're in the right period during I guess the breeding season in the springtime, they'll call. It's an exciting hunt. I mean, hearing a tom turkey reply to you, 2 or 3 properties away, and then you hear them coming through the bush. I mean, that's a feeling that can't really be replicated in any other hunt. I mean, you're talking to the turkey, right? You're talking to the tom, and it's an incredible thing. And yeah, I totally agree. It's a great way to introduce people to the sport. Box of shotgun shells, even a single shot cheap shotgun that you can get for $100. Tags are cheap, and the experience of that kind of hunt is just incredible. I mean, anybody that sat over, tom or a setup of turkey decoys and had a tom come in on full strut with the tail open and all puffed up and strutting around and gobbling and stuff. It's just I talk about it, my hair and my arm goes up. I mean, it really is nothing like a big mature tom turkey when he struts into those decoys. It's just incredible.
That's great. My favorite is hearing them all come off the roost and you hear the gobbles echo through the woods. That's my favorite part.
Yep. Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. I'll anything breeds, runs, flies, or walks. I guess I'll hunt it. We hunt predators. We hunt. I used to actually. I used to really be into hunting dogs. I've got a gun dog now. I've got a retrieving pointer, what they call a versatile gun dog. But for many years I ran beagles. I've ran coonhounds. I hunted bears with coonhounds. I've hunted coons with coonhounds. I mean, anything to get me outside, I suppose, and just I just love it. I can't get enough of it. Guns and hunting, I suppose. That's really what kind of turns my crank. I don't know. Call me abnormal.
No, it's good to have hobbies.
Yeah, well, when your hobby becomes your life, I don't know. It is.
Yeah, it's lifestyle for big chunks of the year for me too.
It's a healthy thing, right? It's a lifestyle. It's year round. I mean, I find myself driving in July and I'm looking out. I'm always oogling and checking out fields and look at that funnel and I'm obsessed with it, right? It's an obsession, is what it is. Yeah.
So guys, I guess elephant in the room. Thoughts and impressions on the breaking news of the day here. What happened on Friday night?
Yeah, that is the news segment this week. Obviously, is going to be the Paris attacks. I'm going to go ahead and say terrorist attacks, even though some politicians seem to want to disagree about that.
Yeah, I had a discussion about this last night with Richard Heathen. Oh man, what a topic. It's the elephant in the room. Tyler nailed it. I mean, how do you deal with these people? Look, ultimately, I think we can all agree. We all know it's not tinfoil hat. The Americans created this situation with ISIS. Here's the deal, and this is only my humble opinion. Guys are more than welcome to disagree with me. Listeners are more than willing to disagree with me. We've got this problem, okay? And again, I try to remain as pragmatic as possible. And if I go off track here, I start to go tinfoil hat. Please, pull me back from the depths. But I should be able to remain relatively pragmatic. We've got a U.S. economy that is obviously inflated by the petrodollar. The exchanging currency on the oil and gas market is the U.S. dollar, and then you've got China that has built a massive economy off of exportation. Obviously over the many years and since communism has rolled out of Russia, their economies are getting stronger. Their people are working. And obviously at one point these two other superpowers, if you want to call them that, don't want to deal with the U.S. currency anymore. I mean, it's just a normal evolution, I suppose, of their economic principles and their successes. I mean, look, you can't take anything away from the Chinese and the success that they've had in terms of development and production and exportation. So, I mean, that being said, you've got the Americans which is bizarre about the Americans, which I never really understood, is when they intervened in Vietnam, I understood that they were intervening with the whole communist idea and this plague of communism, and I understand that. But they really never learned their lesson about intervening and kind of going into places where they shouldn't be. That kind of goes beyond my realm of comprehension, why they continue to do that. I understand the rationale behind, did they want to destabilize the region? I mean, look, we can despise Saddam Hussein. The man was a tyrant. He was a murderer. He was a thug. He gassed the Kurdish people. He did all kinds of horrible and heinous things. Muammar Gaddafi was the same. Assad Bashir is arguably probably, another. His father was absolutely a brutal tyrant. But at the end of the day, these tyrants, and I hate to say this because I almost want to puke when I say it. It actually kicks up my gag reflex. I mean, despite these tyrants, they kept the region stable. Okay, and now the Americans have gone in and they've destabilized it because I think that the Americans are desperate to kind of continue on with this petrodollar and the kind of the artificial inflation of the U.S. dollar. I mean, if they pull that away from the Americans, what will their currency become, right? So, I mean, it's a logical explanation if you know anything about money markets. I mean, it's a huge piece of the value of their currency. So, understandably, they would want to protect that. I don't know if there's some type of a Wizard of Oz, like an evil Wizard of Oz that's been pulling the levers behind the door, behind closed doors, with regards to the reasoning why they destabilized the region the way they did. They did it, okay? And here's the thing. Yes, the Americans may have created ISIS by, trying to arm people against Assad. Nobody wanted to listen to Assad because, Assad was claiming since the beginning that these were terrorists. The Americans obviously didn't want to listen to him. They did not share the same interests. Obviously, the Americans' foreign affairs and foreign policy differs from Bashir.
The Americans did the same thing with Bashir that they did with Afghanistan in the 70s and 80s, right? They funded Al Qaeda to fight the Russians for them before it was Al Qaeda. It's the same. Yeah,
it's exactly
the same American foreign policy 30 years after the fact.
Yeah, and that's what's bizarre to me because the Americans, I mean, obviously now I have no respect for Obama or his administration whatsoever, but I mean, there obviously has to be some intelligent people within these departments and within. Obviously there's a military complex that the Americans, I mean, it's a huge piece of the American economy, the military complex. I mean, I try not to think evil, that there's evil people there, and I'm not naive. I just try not to go down those paths of conspiracy and all this other stuff. But I mean, obviously there's at one point, some things are quite obvious, and I mean, it's obvious that they wanted to stabilize the region. And they didn't learn, like you say, from Afghanistan the very first time around, where they arm the Mujahideen, and who comes out of the Mujahideen? You've got, Osama bin Laden, who actually met with Rumsfeld. I mean, it's just absolutely beyond me that we would get back and say in the same situation with Syria. Like you didn't learn from Vietnam, you didn't learn from some of these other conflicts that you've been involved in, and yet you repeat the same devastating and quite frankly dangerous behavior. So. We know that ISIS is a creation from the Americans, but, and here's the but, these people, the average ISIS fighter, is not a CIA operative, okay? He's not the guy that negotiated the arms deal with the Americans to fight Assad. He's an ideologue that is hell-bent on establishing a caliphate or a religious state or, Sharia law across the globe. I mean, it's written in the Quran. That's what they do. It's an empire. They want to establish. They want the world to be according to their twisted interpretation of what Islam is, right? So these people are actually killing real human beings. They're decapitating real people. They're burning people alive. Those are real people. This is a real situation. They mass murdered Christians, Catholics. Kurds, anybody that they can, that opposes their twisted interpretation of the Quran, and now we've got this, and I do believe that the masters or the masterminds behind the ISIS situation and the Al Qaeda situation, these people know very, very well. I mean, look, the simplest. Military strategy, and one of the most successful ones was the Trojan horse. I mean, here's a present, and inside there were, the barbarians. So, I mean, I think the ISIS has destabilized the region, and they've done this on purpose. It's a tactic of war. They've got the wolves hidden amongst the sheep. So, and you've got all these left-wing socialist countries out, these bleeding heart liberal. I mean, look, the last bastion of a real, true conservative leader was Canada. I mean, anywhere you go across Europe and the European Union, Hollande, Merkel, like Tony Blair, all these people, they're all liberals. They're left-wing, bleeding heart idiots that have been indoctrinated to a mushy head, a state of mushy head. That let's bring in these friendly people, and we bring the Hollande, the French president. It blows my mind. This guy opens, arms wide open avec les bras grands ouverts. Emmenez-vous les frères, les compatriotes français. This absolutely bizarre, emotional state of mind that we're going to bring all these people in without screening them. Just bring them on in, and to think that you're not going to have a faction of these extreme ISIS or ISIL or Al Qaeda or extreme Islam people hiding amongst these refugees is absolutely. I can't even fathom how somebody could not actually have thought of that. That hey, could there be? I mean, let's be realistic about it. And again, 9/11 actually happened. Whatever you believe about 9/11, that makes no difference to me. The reality of 9/11 was that they killed 3,000 people. And this was 19 people that achieved murder of 3,000. Okay, 19 guys. So when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of people flowing across the border, is it not reasonable to say that there could be 1,000, 1,500?
So the first thing with that, though, Sean, is that they've got their hundreds of thousands of people. Every single picture I see, there's hardly any women or children. They're all fighting aged men.
Absolutely, yeah.
So even if you said it was 1/10 of 1% of 100,000 people, you're still dealing with that's 10, right? 1/10 of 1% of 100,000.
Yeah.
It's 10 or 100, but that's enough people to hijack an aircraft for 9/11. That's enough people to go on a terror spree in Paris and take over stadium where there's a rock concert.
Well, look what happened when they did the Charlie Hebdo thing. They basically triggered a nationwide manhunt. How much money do you think that cost the French government? How much manpower had to be immobilized to deal with that one incident?
Well, it's got to be millions of euros, tens of millions of euros.
Millions. And now they did what they did on Friday. 8 or 9 guys, death toll of 129 plus, and ISIS is boasting that they have as many as 4,000 or more fighters smuggled into Europe, and that number is probably higher, because every time you have an attack like what they've done this past weekend, there will be new people joining the ranks because they'll start to see them as more successful and more than just
it's a marketing tool.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's going to get worse.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because the guys that are behind this are Western educated, well educated, and some of these guys are hip to marketing. Like I listened to the ISIL spokesman he was actually the ISIL spokesman for the Paris attacks, the guy that actually claimed responsibility for the attacks. And I listened to the guy speak. He's a Canadian, for God's sakes. The accent the guy spoke with is a Canadian accent. You cannot. I mean, I'm just. And the guy's articulate. I mean, this guy isn't a babbling idiot, or that can't articulate or formulate a sentence or a phrase. The guy was extremely articulate, and obviously speaking without any a total absence of an Arab or foreign accent. This guy spoke perfect English in a Canadian accent, and I mean, look. This is what we're dealing with, and they are extremely brilliant when it comes to marketing. I mean, you look at some of these horrible videos that they've produced. I mean, it's Hollywood-style production. Can you imagine the guy that's got to produce that stuff? He sits back and watches this stuff and pieces it together with his artistic twist of actual people dying. Like, can you imagine the madness, like the sickness of that person? Like, it blows my mind. It goes beyond any comprehension. And I mean, look. We're dealing with this situation, and now we've got Justin Trudeau that wants to bring in 25,000 by Christmas. Is there? There was a huge poll that was done across Europe, and a very credible one. And they actually it was done by and actually a Muslim group that actually did the poll was a moderate Muslim group, and they found that 13% of European Muslims support ISIS. 13%, and in fact, in some places, I believe there's a report by Stéphane Molyneux that he did a video the other day, and I guess they found some spots in Europe where as high as 27%. I mean, can you imagine if let's not go tinfoil hat and say that there's 3,250 extreme ISIL fighters that are coming in with 25,000 Syrian so-called refugees, which I don't buy for a minute. It's a crock of shit, and they're indoctrinating the Canadian people into buying onto this crap about these people being, legitimate refugees. But that being said, is it reasonable to say that there could be 1,000, 1,200 of these people hiding amongst these so-called, refugees fleeing, war? I mean, look, if Canada was under attack, and I'm only speaking for myself here, if my country was under attack by a group of fanatics that, under the guise of a religion, they were trying to promulgate and promote an ideology that was murderous, that would completely go against all Canadian Judeo-Christian values. I mean, obviously that's where our value system came from. It comes from English common law that has found its base in Judeo-Christianity. If there was an extreme group that was trying to overrun my country and go 150% against all the core values that this country were founded upon, would I not? Why would I flee? Like, I wouldn't flee. I'd fight, and I would teach my kids to fight, and I would teach my wife to fight, and I'm not a professional soldier. I would do anything that I could. I would, guerrilla warfare, for God's sakes. I don't know. I would do something, at least something, at the risk of losing my life. I mean, it's a baffling situation. And are there some legitimate people in those 25,000? There probably is some legitimate people. I believe that there probably is. But again, you look over in Lagos, Greece, where they basically destroyed Lagos, and you see this Greek woman, this Greek national, crying in the street because you've got these barbarians, these savages, that kicked down her door, tried to rape her daughter. Like the horror stories of Lesbos, sorry, is just it goes beyond the realm of civilized human beings. So, where I try to remain, relatively objective when I look at the situation about these 25,000, I'm not encouraged. And the worst part about it is, it's not so much the 25,000. The issue for me personally is that the Canadian people have been indoctrinated. Like, there has been a serious campaign of indoctrination happening in this country. The Marxism through the schools, the radical feminization of our kids in school. There's another left-wing agenda that's been at work here for the last 20, 25 years in this country that have all but weakened us to the point that, even if we let Ezra Levant did a report, and he's in the French capital and he's talking to people, and you're looking at the people and they're just exhausted. Like, they don't even have the will to fight. Like, they've been so indoctrinated, so you're a racist if you don't let these people come in, and you're subject to public ridicule and shunning by your neighbors because you don't want these people coming into your country. Like, they've been subjected to this left-wing indoctrination so far to the point that they're just like, you look at the faces and they're exhausted. There's no more passion left. They've got nothing left to defend themselves with, and that's a tragedy of, it makes me sick that these politicians, these elite politicians, sitting on their fiefdom and their kingdoms, and they claim to speak for the people, and you look at the faces of the citizens on the street, and my heart bleeds for these people. It's just absolutely disgusting. It's truly a tragic story, and I talk about it now, and I'm sorry to swear, but it really makes me ill to think that people that are supposed to have been put there democratically are there to protect the best interest of the population and the people that put them there, and the people that actually put their faith and trust in these people. And you've got, and they use that power to push their political agenda and to message and to control the narrative in such ways that they've got this, like, just looking at the French people, like, it's such a tragedy. I mean, look, these are, this is the original republic, for God's sakes. This was a group that held. I mean, the founding principles of France was built on democracy. I mean, it's absolutely tragic. And I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize if I got worked up there. I am sorry if I swore, but it goes beyond my comprehension that they would want these savages, and that's exactly what they are. They're savages. They're an aberration of humanity. They're a disgusting mutation of what a human being can become, and they're doing it under the guise of religion and refugees and legitimate, I was reading a post from somebody on Facebook, and they're being called out because there were some Syrian passports found on some of these guys that committed these treacherous acts of horrific proportions, and they're like, well, they're justifying that. Well, they're not Syrians. It was found out that their passports were fake. Like, do any of these idiots, like in the Liberal Party in freaking Ottawa, do any of these people understand that the people that are in ISIS are not necessarily Syrian? That it's full of insurgents that have come from all across the world into Syria. Guys,
folks from Austria, Germany, France, Canada, even everywhere. Yeah, doesn't matter what passport they hold. It's, and that's one thing I wanted to mention earlier when you were talking about how the Americans created this situation. Is the kind of I'm trying to. Everybody's like trying to figure out who to blame here, and it's obvious everybody immediately looks to the people who did it. But then if you zoom out and you look at it, with an eagle eye perspective, then you kind of ask yourself, well, who's responsible for the situation where, over 100 people are so defenseless that they just get slaughtered like animals?
So that's 100%. That's the fault of their government. Why were these people not able to have the tools that they need to defend themselves?
Now, if the government allowed, the carriage of defensive arms, it very well may be that none of these people would have been carrying anyway because they felt safe and content, and that it was unnecessary. Or a lot of people were at a concert, they're probably drinking and everything, and they'd probably choose not to carry. And it might have worked out the exact same way, but I'll tell you, I would have looked at the situation a lot differently, because at least those people, they made a choice. But in this case, the government made that decision for them, and that decision was to legislate them into the category of victim. And it's total bullshit. You can't undo what's been done. You steal a car and you wreck it. At least you can pay back, the people who you wronged. But these people, their lives are extinguished forever. You can't pay that back. You can't fix that. You can't make it right. And then you take it. You zoom out some more. You zoom out some more, and then who created this whole messed up situation in the first place is. And I feel like it might be a tad unfair to just lay the whole thing at the Americans' feet, because most of the Western world endorsed their policies, and I feel like we all have at least some responsibility to bear here for letting the Americans boss this half of the world around to a certain extent.
That's fair.
Yeah, and that's, I said that in a post the other day. All the sympathy in the world, is not going to bring back the lives that have, like Tyler so eloquently said. When the lives are extinguished, they're extinguished forever, and nobody's bringing them back. I find it absolutely disgusting. And this is here's the the reality of the situation is this: people will arm themselves despite the government. They'll do it, and they'll do it illegally, and because can you imagine the fear? Could you imagine living in Paris right now and just not knowing when the next attack's going to come?
Well, I'll tell you what. I live in Thornbury, Ontario, just a small town, mostly kind of upper middle class, retired people, with a bit of money to throw around, so lots of ski shit and golf courses and whatever. If I was ISIS or anybody who wanted to do this country or like this way of life harm, this is exactly the place I would strike. where people feel safe and removed from international politics, where it's a small town where there's no target of any, political or economic or military value, but this is where people feel safe. And if the idea is to make people quit living the lives the way they're accustomed to, and to make people absolutely terrified, this is also one of the places where that the state response time is going to be pretty much the worst. So you just have a free-for-all to lay waste to the town. And so it to me, where I live now, I don't really feel like it would be any different if I lived in the core of downtown Toronto, because these people can get anywhere. Obviously, they can get any arms that they need anywhere. It doesn't matter. They have the sophistication to do that. And you brought up an excellent point. These people are not idiots picking their ass in a cave. They are intelligent people. They're sophisticated. And they've got a worldwide network of people who are willing to help them. They're capable of anything.
Yep.
And so, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all at risk here, and we've always been at risk. And
yeah, I think that you make a good point there. I think that the risk in terms of the populace or the population or the popular response to situations like this, people on their own eventually will mitigate that risk. And how will they mitigate that risk? Well, they're going to mitigate that risk beyond the grip or the reach of the government. If the government in place won't allow them to mitigate the risk for themselves and for their loved ones and for their property, they'll find other ways to mitigate that risk, and they'll do it. And regardless of what government may tell them they can or cannot do. So, I mean, that being said,
that's how I mitigate the risk.
Yeah, that's generally how I'd mitigate the risk too. Yep.
That'll do it.
Yep, it absolutely will, for sure. So, that, and you're right. Firearms ownership in France is relatively. They've got a smaller population of firearms owners. I think they've got about 1,800,000, I think, firearm owners in that country. They say that they've got 90 million guns. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's a number that I've heard. Now, they've got different classifications of licensing. You're only allowed to have, so many rounds of ammunition. I believe 1,000 is the maximum. There's a whole bunch of different controls out there. Obviously, the bad guys aren't following those rules. But
it's just like everywhere else. The laws only apply to the law-abiding citizens.
Well, and here's the thing. And I forget the philosopher that actually did this. There was a guy who did a study of unpopular law, and it was a fascinating article. I'd have to find it. But he did a very intelligent, peer-reviewed, empirical evidence-based journal on unpopular law and the populace or the population's reaction when laws become unpopular. And when they become unpopular to the point where the compliance levels are so low, it becomes almost quasi-impossible to enforce. So I think the danger of this, really, that the French people really need to wake up to is that let's look at Britain for a minute. Now you've got that group that's now formed called Britain First, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with these guys. These guys are pretty hardcore. And what happens when you have an extreme faction on one end of the spectrum, you've got an innocent populace in the middle, you're going to have extreme factions that are going to sprout up on the other end of the spectrum, okay? And in between the two, you've got the populace, right? You've got the innocent population caught between the two. And, people will, look, since the time of the caveman, when there was a tyrannical caveman in the tribe that was, raping people's women when they were out hunting, the other cavemen at one point, whether the chief liked it or not, they would grab a stone and crack open the bad guy's skull. I mean, it's part of human history. It's part of human tragedy, I suppose. But people, regardless of rules and regulations that you place on them, when it comes down to question of survival, I think human beings are capable of some pretty astonishing and absolutely incredible things when it comes to their survival. And people will do what they have to do to make sure that they survive. And end of story. I mean, it is what it is.
And I think that's where it can get really ugly. I mean, people like to say that Europeans don't have guns, and that might be true to a large extent, but it's not the whole truth. They do have access to at least some guns. I'm sure everybody read the article that Austrians were buying everything that was for sale. And as it turns out, they were totally justified. I'm sure they're feeling pretty good about their purchases now.
Oh yeah, that's paying dividends.
Well, you remind me of
same thing. The Germans have access to all kinds of stuff. It's an insanely bureaucratic system, but they do have access to guns, and it's only a matter of time before there's pushback. I mean, they already set a mosque on fire in Peterborough, in this half of the world where we're somewhat removed, but yet people still feel, some sort of connection, either whether it's like a Western world thing or because France is like, a parent country of Canada. There is a connection there, and people feel like we've all been attacked as a whole. Maybe it's a Christian thing, I don't know, but there's already the signs of the pushback. You've got formation of groups like Pegida in Germany that probably would have been declared illegal if they formed 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and things are changing.
Talk about that thing for a minute, Tyler, because something that I find really interesting is this whole internet activism, Western society bullshit thing where they're focusing on France. But like 2 days beforehand, a bunch of people got blown up in Beirut by ISIS is claiming responsibility, and it got 10 minutes of media coverage.
Yep,
and all I can see on the news for 4 straight days is Paris. Not that one is like more important than the other, but seriously, fuck the mainstream media. Why is Beirut not getting coverage and Paris is?
Well, I mean, the simple answer is because white people died. I mean, that's the simple answer, to put it bluntly. It's the same reason why the wars in the Balkans got so much coverage as opposed to all the massacres that were taking place in Africa at the exact same time.
Yep.
It's
just disgusting. It's absolutely gross. If you ask me, the value of a human life. I don't care if you're white, purple, green. I don't care. You're a human being, and you should be respected as such. Your life is worth as much as any other human being. I don't care what color your skin is. And I find it absolutely disgusting, gross, and just a total misrepresentation of humanity that the Beirut bombings weren't covered. These innocent people, their innocent lives were extinguished, just like the people in Paris. And I find it absolutely outrageous and disgusting that the hordes of these idiotic, absolutely biased journalists, that most of their shit that they write isn't worth wiping your ass with. It's just absolutely disgusting. We're failing, and really, I mean, they have to claim responsibility. The media and the journalists and the hashtaggers and the tweeters and all these freaking idiots out there need to take some responsibility in the sense that they seem to be creating this it's absolutely disgusting to think that.
No, it's asinine. It's completely asinine. And this hashtag thing, I stand with Paris and pray for Paris. Fuck that. You want to pray for Paris? Send some goddamn ammunition.
Yeah.
That's like what?
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, that's.
I changed my Facebook profile. I must have defeated terrorism because now I have a little French flag on my Facebook. Fuck that.
It's not
like what? You're not putting your time, your energy, or your money into actually solving a problem. You're doing this because you want to feel included in something that's going on that doesn't directly impact you. That I cannot stand these people that are hashtag pray for Paris. Hashtag stand up and do something about it. Hashtag the next time one of these guys goes into a soccer stadium or a concert, shoot a motherfucker. That's the solution to this. 140 people getting shot because they're 140. I can't believe that nobody had the energy in Paris to do anything about this. Like 140 people just stand there and got killed like that. I can't fathom how in a civilized society no one's willing to stand up and like, okay, there's a couple of dudes with guns. There's thousands of people in this building. Bum rush them. Like
poke them in the eye, rip their face open, punch them, kick them. Break a chest off and stab them through the back. Do something, but do something. Don't stand around and
do something.
Them. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, due to the problem that Sean was articulating earlier, when he was talking about the pacification of men in particular through the school system, is it teaches people to just depend on the state for that kind of action. All you can do is run and hide. Like a good little citizen. You're taught not to take matters into your own hands. You're taught not to react, but to ask for permission or ask for help. And that starts right from when you're a super young age, when they, you see a bully, stop, tell an adult. Don't stand up to him, because you'll get in just as much trouble for punching him back. And, it's insane, but it goes right back to that indoctrination point that's like so prevalent and so easily recognizable from, I'm sure, the perspective of everybody on this panel. But a lot of people keep voting for more of the same, and they keep getting it. And it's disgusting. And quite frankly, people get the government they deserve, and that's exactly what the French have, and that's exactly what Canada has as a whole. And that's why we do things like this podcast, because we're trying to kind of spread this message so that people might give their heads a shake and wake up and vote for something different, or at the very least do what we're doing. Just have that small measure of preparedness, so that if shit does go down, you're not stuck hiding in a corner, waiting for your time to die.
Well, that's the part that I can't believe is, like Bataclan, you've got like 1,000 people there for a rock concert, and witness statements in the news are saying that people were told to sit still or they'd be shot, and everyone just sat still. Like,
they were going to get shot anyway.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the terrorists are there to kill people. That's their role. Your job is not to wait for them to shoot you. Your job is to bum rush them and hit them with an amp or a guitar or whatever you have at your disposal, because there's 1,000 of you.
Yeah, but I have to agree with Tyler on that. I look with my own boys. I've got 2 young boys here, and I've said to my wife many, many times, in today's schools, certainly in Quebec, there is no more room for boys. It's just, it's clearly a radical feminist agenda to feminize boys, and look, I mean, and I think this goes into an area that explains a lot of different things, and I don't want to go off onto too much of another tangent here, because I want to keep focused on this ISIS thing, but I'll explain the situation here, and tell me if I'm, like I say, if any of the listeners or anybody out there or any of you guys think that I'm off way out in left field, please correct me. I appreciate it. But here's the deal: you've got a boy that's a normal boy, very energetic. Rough houses in school. Rough houses with his friends in the schoolyard. Blah 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 blah. He's got a lot of energy. He's high maintenance in the classroom. The teacher will come to the parents and say, "Your child has attention deficit syndrome, and we need to medicate him." Okay. So we medicate the child because most parents are disconnected from the realities of, and quite frankly, a lot of parents have faith and trust that the teachers are, professionals that are bringing added value to their child's upbringing, to their life, their value, their education, all this stuff. So they trust the teachers. The teacher says, we need to put your kid on Ritalin. So the parents go out, they see a doctor, they get the kid on Ritalin. Now the kid's going through this Ritalin thing, and all the while, he's being told, you have to, you can't, it's like here. Another tangent real quick. My wife has a daycare, and we've watched a change in the last 10 years of children. I saw a child biting his mother the other day, slapping her, hitting her, biting her, because he didn't want to put his shoes on. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my dad or my mother, if I had ever kicked, bit, or hit them, I'd have been black and blue. I would have been whipped with the belt. I would have been thrown out in the street. Hell, I mean, I would never even fathomed or thought about biting my parents. Okay, so that being said, we're medicating these kids. We're feminizing them. Oh, and she's there. She's being bitten. She's like, oh, honey, please put your shoes on. Like, she's sitting there negotiating with this savage little kid that's acting like a total animal, and we're negotiating him putting his shoes on. Grab the kid by the hair, sit him down, and put his freaking shoes on him. But this is where we're going with society, right? We have to negotiate with children. We have to make them feel included. You can't exclude anybody. There can't be a difference in strength. There can't be competitiveness, because that's unfair. So, I mean, this is what we've created. We've created I mean, you go into Montreal and you look at some of these people that are, I go to Montreal or some of the Quebec City or in Toronto or Vancouver, and you look at the guys, like you look at the men that are around there, and you're like man purses and scarves, and like you go to shake their hand, and it's like shaking a wet rag. It's like, man, like when did it become bad to be a man? when you shake a man's hand, you look him in the eye and you grab a hold of his hand and you shake it, for God's sakes. Like,
I'll tell you what, man. I went to a work party
my God.
with my girlfriend, and all of her coworkers are from Mississauga, Toronto. And I shook one guy's hand. It was like grabbing a piece of raw chicken. It was disgusting. It just lacked all conviction. Like,
it has nothing to do with being misogynist. I'm just saying that, look,
yeah.
So, but now we've got these kids, right, that their whole lives have gotten everything they wanted. They're spoiled rotten. They bitten their mothers. They hit their fathers. They disrespect everybody. They've been medicated. And now you send them out into the free world. They get your first dose of rejection from the girl that they try to get into her pants, and she smacks them in the mouth. And then all of a sudden, for the first time in his life, he's been told no. He goes berserk and goes on a shooting spree. Like, this is what's happening, right? So, I mean, to think that, like you say, that you had all these people, like, I'm totally not surprised. I mean, the whole extreme feminism, Marxism, cultural Marxism thing in the schools in France, I mean, that's been there. It's been well established there for 50 years. Whereas Canada, you know, it's really only taken a foothold in the last 15 to 20 years. So there are still guys like us out there. There aren't people like us out there in France anymore. I mean, I speak French, and you talk to these people, and it's just it's like they're brainwashed. It's like they're zombies, and they don't even, like, they've been weakened to the point where, like I say, the despair on their faces, because they're just so weak that they can't formulate a rational interpretation of the situation, an assessment of the danger, to gather the strength, courage, and values, because obviously to defend another human being against attack or to risk your own life for another human being requires a certain level of human values. Now, not necessarily bravery. I mean, you guys probably know I did some things in the past. I saved some people. I got some stuff from the RCMP, and I was scared shitless. I mean, I was scared shitless. But there was something deeper inside me, a value for human life, a value for innocence, that drove me to do what I did. But I was still scared. And it's not about being afraid or not being afraid. It's about doing the damn right thing to save another human being's life. And so I think that we've got, in terms of society, I mean, we've got some serious problems. Look, the ISIS people and their culture, they're raising a warrior culture of kids that definitely have the stomach for killing. And we've got these feminists, Marxists, that have taken the run of the roost in our schools, and we're producing chicken handshake, man, like wet chicken. Like, how are we going to effectively defend ourselves when you turn and look to the people, that the citizens, and the guy's wearing a scarf, you know, drinking a kale shake, and, you know, the little pressure at work, he's burnt out, and I'm burnt out, and I'm, you know, oh, you've offended me because you I don't know, you know, one of the million and other ways that they could be offended.
I mean, you got an entire generation of men that will come out of the school system knowing how to safely insert a buttered up cucumber in their ass, as opposed to the safe operation of a firearm. And that's the truth. I mean, they're actually going to learn that shit.
That's politically incorrect, but I guess it is the truth.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, well, look at Ontario. I mean, I read their guide to fisting and to,
oh my God, it's ridiculous. Like, you can't even believe it. It's like, you look at this, and I feel like I'm on a reality show, you know, where they're waiting until, like, I crack when I finally, you know, I've just had enough of it. They want to see how much I'll put up with, and it's just like, yeah, you look around. It's like your experiences dealing with some of these people in Quebec and France, and you're just like, are you for real? Like, are you a real person? You're not a paid actor? Like, how can you actually string those words together into that sentence and look at me with a straight face? It's unbelievable.
Do you need more? Like, oh, look, Tyler needs more barbiturates. Give him more. And you're like, and you're like,
like, I don't even know how to handle it anymore. I just, like, in a lot of cases, all I can do is shake my head. And unfortunately, a lot of times I find myself just shaking my head and say, you know what, they deserve it. Because it's just like, you know, I grew up in the same society that everybody else my age has. And, you know, I'm here. I managed to see through all the BS and figure things out for myself. And I by no means had a difficult childhood. Like, I was raised properly. Like, I got the belt a few times when I was a little shit. And, I got discipline, and I'm absolutely totally grateful to my parents because they sent me to a private school from kindergarten to grade 8, and that might have made all the difference. Because if I went through the public school system in those formative years, I might have turned out like everybody else. And so for that, I'm grateful, because at my school we actually I had this Chinese woman for my grade 5 teacher, and she was still hitting kids across the knuckles with a meter stick, and this was in, I guess, grade 5. I would have been 7 years old, 1995, I guess, right around then. So we were still getting smacked in the knuckles and rapped on the wrists and everything back then. And yeah, that's in the last 15, 20 years, like you said, man, that's all but gone.
Well, I think that one of the things that that certainly has disappeared from Canadian education is critical thinking skills.
It's non-existent.
Oh, it's non-existent, and it's actually not. Whereas in my day, critical thinking was rewarded. Today, it's actually discouraged. Right? You can't think outside the box. You can't question it. My kids come home with some of the most outrageous things in their school books. And do you guys remember reading Killing a Mockingbird?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, they've got a new and improved version. Did you know that?
No, but lay it on me, because I'm sure this is going to be amazing.
There's no more black slave. There's no more the dad killing the dog. There's no more of any of that stuff. That's all been removed from Killing of a Mockingbird. And in fact, they've changed the name of the book. It's not Killing Mockingbird anymore. It's just Mockingbird.
I was going to guess it was strong language with Mockingbird.
That's insane.
So what? It's got to be about 10 pages now. It's an afternoon read for them, and everybody gets a participation ribbon, right, for reading it.
Yeah, like I get back to that critical thinking thing. Tyler, people like us, I think we're critical thinkers, and we're refractory to authority, right? I mean, that's why we're doing what we're doing right now. None of us, we all share one common thread in terms of personality trait, and I think that we're refractory to authority. And I think, in my day, some of those, and obviously not all of those behaviors were rewarded, but they were in certain, in a positive or an intellectual fashion or state of mind at that period of time, those types of critical thinking skills were actually rewarded. Whereas today, you're just a mindless sheep, and if your kid or your son or your daughter questions the authority or questions the material or the book that they're reading, or the theories that are being taught in front of the school, then they need to be medicated, and we need to get them on some type of a special student program where we can give them more individual attention on how to kind of wheel them back under the Marxist regime of the radical feminization of kids. It's just it's unbelievable, right? Like it's sickening, and it's tragic, and it's like Tyler says, we've created a total generation of very weak, very weak men. And look, I mean, I'm not saying that, and I'm not trying to be misogynist here when I say that. We're talking about men, but let's talk about men. I mean, you go through a divorce, the feminized courts are, basically ruining men's lives. Like, there's a lot of things, men's issues that aren't being dealt with. As soon as you start to talk about being a man or what virility is, I watch I click on the weirdest shit. I'm kind of weird that way. Like, I am totally one of these guys that is like, the clickbait stuff. Like, I click on everything. I read everything. I click on everything. It's terrible. And I click on some of the most outrageous shit sometimes. So I've been watching these explain what it means to be a virile man, right? Like what is the essence of manhood? And and nothing to take away. I'm totally okay with homosexuals. I'm totally okay with that. I've got no issues with it at all. You're free to do whatever you want. Free to who you love. Love has no boundaries. The heart knows no mind. I've got all that stuff. It's cool. But when they're talking about virility and being a man, like, all of the people that they're questioning are all homosexual. And not to say that there aren't some very, there's not some very, manly homosexuals, but those aren't necessarily the homosexuals that they're taking to discuss the issue. They're taking the homosexuals that are more feminine, right? And you know, and that's fine. I get that, and they might see virility in their own sense, and virility it really is in the minds and the hearts of the beholder, I suppose. But they never use, you know, men that are like, rah, you know, lumberjacks or that big haired, you know, red beard with the salmon flopped over his shoulder with his shirt off, flexing his muscles. Like, we don't see these guys anymore. You know, our heroes are, you know, are Adam Levine. Like, you know, nothing to take away from Adam Levine, but I mean, it's you know, strong men aren't rewarded. Look, you know. Oh God.
Well, I'll give you a participation ribbon story, and this isn't even like a strong man thing. Okay, when I was really young, the school that I mentioned, we at the end of the year, there were awards given out for the top achiever in each subject, and what would happen is I would win the award in, like, you know, 7 out of 8 categories or whatever it was. Like, most of them, it was a sweep. And so after like 3 years of this, what they did was they created a bullshit award called the Academic Excellence Award, gave that to me, and then they gave the next best kid in each subject, they got the top achiever in whatever subject it was. Because I guess, you know, people perpetually coming in second or third place wasn't enough to motivate them to try harder and to be better, you know, to get that recognition. Now they get that recognition so that they don't feel left out. And it's bullshit. And that's that kind of cultural Marxism thing you're talking about. You know, these kids, and look, obviously they're intelligent people if they're, like, you know, up in the higher echelon of achievements, but they didn't earn it. It's bullshit. And I was obviously, you know, deprived of the recognition that I was supposed to have achieved under this system, and it's total bullshit. But that was, I guess, that probably started when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and it's been getting worse ever since. And you see it in, like, every level of society, not just education, but you see unions and government through legislation making companies pay people more than what they're actually worth on the labor market, for example, and things of that nature. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And it's kind of like, I know you, Sean, are like more or less a libertarian in terms of your position, especially since you're opposed to most forms of taxation, like me. And it's just kind of like, it gets to the point where you wonder whether it's even reversible, or whether you should just put your feet up and watch the thing collapse under the weight of its own bullshit. You know, because that's what's going to happen in Europe. You know, the time where that, you know, empty rhetoric about, you know, being peace and love and everybody's equal and all this, like, that time is over. I mean, that paper castle, or that paper tiger, you know, that's coming crumbling down now that the wolves are at the gates and they're starting to shoot people and kill people at will with impunity. I mean, what happened in that concert hall? They shot the place up, and then it took the police like 2 hours to mount a counterattack. You know, in the meantime, people are just dying helplessly. Like, it's total bullshit. It's unbelievable. Like, I don't know how people put up with it. Like, it's like one of the greatest deceptions that has ever been pulled. And this is the way it's going to go down in the history books, I'm confident. You know, 100 years from now, they might read about this era, and they're going to be talking about how governments had so much manipulative power through their intermediaries, basically let's call it, you know, like the Ministry of Propaganda that we call the mainstream media. These people had so much control over public opinion that even though the government created the situation in the first place, people ended up blaming, you know, people on the other side of the world for it. And it's just like, look, like, how long can this go on? How high does the pile of bodies have to be before people give their heads a shake and say, we're being led around in circles while we all get massacred or replaced, and who's really to blame here? It's actually that guy over there that we elected last year, and he's not doing anything but making sure that we're just lambs being led to the slaughter here.
Yeah, you know, it's you touched on something there that I find critical to this whole debate, and it's you know, it's the competition thing, right? It's the cultural Marxism again at work. You know, they don't want competitiveness. They don't want to reward competitiveness. They don't want to, you know, there was this, I don't know if it was a spoof or it was actually for real, where some soccer league in Ontario removed the ball from soccer.
That was from the Beaverton. It's like the Canada's the Onion.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but whether it was a spoof or whether it was true, I mean, I coming from Ontario, I would actually believe it was true. But you know, it just goes to show how ridiculous it is. And you know, to touch on that, you know, a university degree. There was actually an article today in the French newspaper La Presse about the value of a university degree. These people they're brain dead. Like, they've got these bullshit degrees that mean nothing, that do nothing, that will get you nowhere in life. And it's just some, you know, I mean, where is the value to a university degree? You know, when I was a kid, somebody that was university educated, man, that was really something. That was really something. That required discipline, that required, you know, sacrifice, that required hard work, that required, you know, competitiveness, strength, all these really great qualities. And today, you can be you can be void of any intelligence whatsoever. You can be basically a frothing at the mouth idiot, and you can walk away from a Canadian university with a degree because they've made it so that, you know, if you even put in a meager effort, you know, that we're going to reward you because, you know, it's unfair to your colleague or the buddy next to you. Like that's the thing. They want to make everybody just a mindless sheep that is equal on every level with everybody else. It's soft communism, is what it is.
Absolutely. I wouldn't even describe it as soft communism. I mean,
No,
I remember there were guys that I went to school with who should have failed. There was a guy that I was in high school with in grade 11 who literally could not read, and yet he was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, holy, and this guy, I don't know, he probably had, you know, some sort of disability. And, you know, so maybe he should have been afforded like a little bit of, maybe should have been put in a different stream. But because they didn't want to make him feel left out or whatever, you know, they had him stay in the mainstream. And meanwhile, everybody else, I know I'm sorry to say, but everybody else in the class suffered because we spent literally like half the class trying to help this guy keep up. And everybody lost out. I mean, they say that equality is the destruction of excellence because you cannot make a genius out of a stupid person by making them listen to Mozart, but you can make a stupid person out of a genius by, you know, locking him in a closet and not stimulating, you know, his mind.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. You can only run at the speed of the slowest horse. So when they want everybody to have equal results, then what they do is they just dumb things down so that everybody passes. And yeah, it's exactly like I was going to school with complete idiots. And like I would say like a good half of my graduating class in high school should have failed. They should not have been allowed to advance. And then the people that you see end up in university, a lot of them are there, you know, pursuing, I don't know, just bullshit. They might even be there for 7 or 8 years, just kind of floundering because there's cheap loans, you know, or you know, BS grants that they can get their hands on, and that's all coming out of everybody's pockets. You know, by the way, that's not just free money, and that's the reality of it now. It's just like, yeah, it's like, what good is a university degree? It's kind of like, yeah, what you're saying, you know, 20 years ago, a university degree was like really something. Like, shit, you had to really, you know, cut your teeth and you know, buckle down and study, and you probably had to work, you know, like a full-time job while you were studying just to pay for it. And not to say that things should be expensive just to weed people out, but it's just like today, it's so cheap and it's so easy to obtain that it's virtually worthless.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I was hiring at my old job, I was looking at people, and virtually everybody had a degree, but it was almost invariably in something totally non-applicable to what they were applying for. Like, it's just like, if you didn't, I don't know, it blows my mind. It blows my mind.
I've got a master's degree in basket weaving. Can I have the brain surgery job? You know, yeah. Like,
well, you see so much of that in like the liberal arts degrees. If you want 14th century French literature, there's not a lot of call for that as an employer.
You know, there's a great book on that. I know you guys are both kind of intello, like to read and educate yourselves. There's a great book called Good to Great, and it's a book written by a guy named Jim Collins.
Good book.
Have you read it?
Yes.
It's
a very good book. Excellent management book.
Excellent. and he's got this what they call the hedgehog concept. Get people on the bus and break people off the bus, and but that doesn't coincide with Marxist cultural Marxism. It doesn't coincide with. So you got to remember, these people are vehemently against mean capitalism and competition, free markets, all this stuff. They're vehemently against that, and they look, they're brilliant. The people behind this are absolutely brilliant. They figured out a way that they can eliminate capitalism, free markets, liberty, individual property rights, individual rights, and they can do that by indoctrinating kids through school, right? And you listen to these. Everybody has to share, and everybody has to love one another, and kumbaya, bring out the guitar. Let's give a big group hug. How is that going to prepare you for the real world? I mean, it may prepare you for a degree in basket weaving, but it certainly is not going to prepare you for the the real world when it comes to real competition between real companies and real money at stake.
The interesting thing is it's not even about competition with your fellow Canadians anymore. Like, it's a global economy. People wonder why their real wages haven't improved in the last 20, 30 years. It's because you're competing with people on the other side of the planet who have far lower expectations for what they're going to obtain from their labor. And hey, guess what? That's why your job, making circuit boards, is over in Korea now. I mean, that's the sad reality of life. And that the period of time between World War II and like 2000, that's probably never coming back. Like, barring some catastrophic war that shuts down that part of the world, it's probably never coming back. And you're just going to have to get used to that. And so as a result, you got to be more competitive.
Yeah,
you have to be more competitive.
Yeah, you do. And I'm from Windsor, Ontario, automobile capital. Well, once was the very proud automobile capital of Canada, and unfortunately now it's a wasteland to union corruption and everything else that's wrong with this unionization of this country. But there was I remember on ABC News on WXYZ, which is the Detroit news channel, this reporter, he was a pretty conservative guy, and he did a report on not Kia. Is it Kia? What's the Korean car maker?
Kia.
Is it
Hyundai?
Kia? Hyundai. He did a report on Hyundai, and he went down on Woodward Avenue to Chrysler plant, and he did a report on the start of their day to the end of their day and how they operate, okay, the average worker. And it starts out with these Korean auto workers, the Hyundai workers, out in the field, gathered outside of the shop. They're on the front lawn of Hyundai, and there's about, 5,000 workers out there, and they're doing exercises. And then the contramite, or the foreman, is out there, and when the bell rings, these people are like warriors. They've got their hands up like this, they got their war face on, and they run to their jobs. They're screaming and crying and screeching this war cry to get to their post and to build cars. And then he flips over to Chrysler on Woodward Avenue, and you see this big fat guy with his belly hanging out. His work boot laces aren't laced up. He's moseying along, and they're shooting the shit. And you can hear the buzzer going off in Chrysler's, and he's just pulling up to the gate. And he gets in there, and they're going through this, and it's not in my job description. And the forklift stops at lines that are painted on the shop floor, and we don't do that in my department because that's not my. And if you've got a problem with that, I'll do a grievance. And I mean, it was sublime to see the difference in the cultural differences. And then you've got these idiots out there, like you say, oh, well, why am I only making $8 an hour, and why is my job being shipped over there? The Chinese, they don't have cultural Marxism in their schools.
That's right.
They've already come full circle.
That's right. It's communism in name only, practically, in a lot of respects. There, a lot of people they say that. Well, I mean, we can see in our schools that to stereotype here, people from Asian backgrounds tend to achieve at higher levels than a lot of other groups.
They're far more disciplined than we are.
They'll come. A lot of these people in Canada, anyway, are like second-generation immigrants, like their parents are immigrants,
Yep.
And so they're coming from people who had to work their asses off and achieve on such an astounding level just to be able to accumulate the wealth to pick up and leave to move to this country. And then they've instilled those values in their children who are doing the same thing, and they're kicking everybody's asses because we're churning out people that are, shooting the shit when work is supposed to start at 8:30. They're still sipping their coffee at 8:45 doing nothing.
Yeah. Oh man, anyway, the report that this guy did was absolutely fascinating. It was absolutely shocking, and then all the unions hated him, and everybody was protesting, and it was horrible. But the guy actually had to move away from Michigan because they wanted to burn his house down and everything else. But and you're absolutely right. It's the Chinese. These people they're hard workers, and in China, you've got tendonitis. Next, you've broken your leg at work. Oh, you're done. Next, like they don't have time to waste on frivolous things frivolous. I mean, it could be argued frivolous things like tendonitis. So obviously they're outproducing us, right? Obviously, and a lot of people understand that in Canada, and that's why we try to focus on innovation and product development. But it blows my mind. And these people they're extremely disciplined. They're hardworking people. I know many immigrant folks that have come to this country and brought value. And the stories that you hear, certainly from people from places like India, where they've got this, the caste kind of culture, where your dad was a shoemaker, you're a shoemaker, your kids are going to be a shoemaker, and just hearing some of the stories of the sacrifice that their parents had to make, not only to come to Canada to build a better life for their kids, but the discipline they installed in these, it's absolutely work. We as a people, Canadian people that have been Canadian educated, it raises a good point. Most of you guys that follow me know that my grandfather was a combat pilot in the RAF, and I would tell him every 11th of November, I appreciate and respect, the sacrifice that you made. And you know what he told me? Stop talking to me about the 11th of November. I don't even want to hear it mentioned. Don't call me on the 11th of November. I don't want to be. Don't even think about me on the 11th of November. He said, Canadians are weak. He told me that, and he told me that for many, many years. And he said that we were weak. And he said, the Canadian government, or the Canadians, he said, and don't get me wrong here, this is my grandfather speaking, this isn't me. We lost 100 and whatever thousand men in World War II. And my grandfather said, we lost millions. And, we did what we did, and we carried on, and nobody complained, and, nobody remembered us, and nobody, So, there's that mindset of some of the immigrants that came to this country, very, very different from us, right? Very different. And I have nothing but respect for folks that, people that have come here from India, from China, from Vietnam, from other countries that come here to add value, that want to share in Canadian values and opportunities and freedom. And like you say, they do. They're smarter, they're harder workers, they're more disciplined. They're just different value system, right?
Definitely. It's a totally different value system, and I think that plays a big role in why we see certain cultural groups perform better than others. I think that's totally what it comes down to, is they have the drive from their parents, because their parents were highly motivated people, and they've instilled that level of motivation, right? Sure,
that's why you saw the development of advanced agriculture in Europe, because the environmental conditions forced them to do it, because they had to, because of the winter.
Had to, absolutely.
So, there's always all these factors at play here, but to kind of bring things full circle, it's just like this. We pretty much, obviously, we abandoned the primary topic for this episode, given
I'm fine with that.
The complexities of what went down this past weekend. But I don't know. Do you guys? Do you have any idea? I'd be interested to hear you guys speculate on how things are going to play out in the next year or so in Europe.
Well, I think that they've got an overwhelming problem that is going to become exponentially worse. The reality is that Europeans have very low birth rates. They're not having kids. They're not building extended families. They don't share. You're dealing with a group, cultural group that believes in polygamy, that believes in multiple wives, that believes in many, many children. It's actually written in the Quran that they have to procreate and have kids, and these people are devout to their religion, devout to that book, and they're outnumbering, their birth rates are outnumbering, quite frankly, it's a question of math. I don't think it can be reversed.
Number one name for children in London last year, Muhammad.
Yeah. I don't think that it's. I hate to say this. I think that the world leaders. You know who I have the most respect for out of all of these is Japan. Japan.
Really?
Yeah,
because they've outlawed everything to do with Sharia.
Oh yeah, I mean they outlawed Islam. I think there's a handful of them there, but I mean I don't really like the whole no guns thing. But I really have a lot of respect for Japanese culture. You know, they respect their parents. There's a lot of things about their culture that I respect. But I think that European leaders have a dire situation on their hands.
Oh, they do. They absolutely do. And I'm really interested to see what Hollande does, because he's pretty much unleashed his air force on ISIS right now. Well, he is an idiot, but
that brings up like a very interesting point. You know, like the day or 2 days after this attack, now they're bombing targets in Syria and Iraq. Like, were they just sitting on this intel? You know, and they just decided not to act on it. Like, what the hell is that?
The German security services warned the EU this was going to happen 6 weeks before it happened.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like, if they knew, I mean that's one thing, obviously. I mean the same thing can be argued, for 9/11, right? Like the Americans were, the Americans were warned that something was going to go down. The Americans were warned that something was going to go down, and I'm sure. Like, I mean, they say that Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, they're on like medium terror alerts, and it's just like,
what does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly. How long does that go on, and how do you decide what to take seriously and what not?
Do you remember in 2002, the U.S. Homeland Security, whatever year they were formed, they came up with that screwed up color system for
orange and yellow and red and whatever.
Yeah, but today's an orange level terror alert.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's just ridiculous, but. But it's just like, look, okay, so the day or 2 days after they're sending aircraft and they're bombing the living hell out of targets in Iraq or Syria, it's just like, how did they get that intel so quickly? And if they have the capacity to get that intel so quickly, then why weren't they doing it this whole time? And if they had the intel just sitting there, why weren't they acting on it? Did they need to wait for there to be a huge pile of French bodies for them to do something? Like,
I think it's politically advantageous for them to have waited. But on Thursday, Obama came out with a statement saying that ISIS is contained. The Americans have this under control. ISIS is contained. And then ISIS make the largest, most devastating military strike in European history since the end of the Second World War.
Yeah.
And this lets Hollande's military off the leash. He's going to bomb the ever-loving shit out of Syria.
Here's the thing that we have to we need to get our heads wrapped around this. You will not, okay, I repeat, you will not, it is impossible to stop these people, okay? In terms of the attacks, most of them don't even communicate with anybody in some type of a higher form or circle. It's one ideologue that goes around and convinces 2 or 3 more other ideologues around him, and they cook up a plan and they go and they move forward with it.
Yeah, I mean, they go and do it. There's no centralized leadership. It's not like when we were fighting the Germans, where you go and you smash their factories and you destroy their perimeter defenses and you start getting at like the heart of their existence, and then you say, okay, we give up. All right, we're done. You know, It doesn't work that way. These people like dying, even like by fighting and dying. That's like the second best outcome for them, other than them achieving their global caliphate. You know, them fighting and dying in war against, us infidels, that's like the next best thing. So there's nothing you can do, no matter how hopeless things get for them, no matter how many of their oil trucks we destroy, no matter how many of their oil fields we take from them, no matter how many of their ammunition depots we blow up. It doesn't matter. They're never going to give up. They will always continue to fight us. Now, the only thing we can do is obviously them them holding territory in Syria and Iraq gives them an actual tax base. I mean, they've basically hit all the checkpoints of statehood. They hold territory and they've achieved taxation, and they're developing infrastructure. I mean, that's a state.
I hate to say this. I mean, it sounds almost horrible. I almost like a horrible human being when I say this, but I think the only real option to deal with this situation is to contain them. And if that requires a 25-foot wall, then so be it. I mean, I don't think that there's any other way that we're going to be able to, because I agree with you, Tyler, no level of bombing is going to, I mean, beyond, turning them into a shadow like the Hiroshima bombings where people became basically shadows on a wall.
Exactly, like beyond killing all of them, which no one is prepared to do.
Right.
And that's all you can do.
And it's funny that we talk about that because, and this goes to show the difference in terms of where we were and where we are now. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the Americans quickly understood that they could not stop the Japanese. The Japanese would not stop. They would kill themselves. When they first started to see on those boats in the Pacific where the Japanese pilots would actually crash their planes into the boats, and they realized that they were dealing with an enemy that was willing to go to a very extreme length to ensure victory. And they quickly understood the honor system, and that these people would rather, open up disembowel themselves with a sword than be captured or be, dishonored by the enemy. So there was really no other option to deal with these people at that time. And I hate to say this because millions of people and millions of innocent people died through that, but it was really the only way to stop them was to bring them to their knees. And there really was no other opportunity. Like, I mean, there's really no other. Like, what was the other? I mean, what other choice did the Americans really have at that time? I mean, like, I'm trying to figure out a diplomatic solution to it. And the same with the ISIS people. There is no diplomatic solution. You can't sit down and say to them, well, we'll let you rape, pillage, burn people alive, but you only can do it in this certain area. But don't come out of this area because you can't negotiate on diplomatic terms with these people. It can't be done. So I mean, realistically, beyond dropping a nuclear bomb on them and turning them into permanent shadows, burnt into a wall somewhere, which obviously we don't have the stomach for anymore as Western society. I mean, we've obviously lost the ability to do that to people.
We don't even have the stomach for carrying out a ground war properly.
No, you're right. That's exactly.
You have to wait until you're under fire before you shoot at the enemy. Like it.
Yeah, we don't have the stomach for it.
You can't write this,
No, I know. Nobody really talks about this out there in society because it's taboo and it's kind of harsh to say that maybe that is what's required. But you're absolutely right. We don't have the stomach for it. We've lost the ability to do what needs to be done. Right. The days of George Orwell's rough men in the middle of the night, doing harm on our behalf, so that we can sleep peacefully in our beds. Those days are long gone, and so I don't think that we have what is necessarily required to a permanent, lasting solution, and not even permanent because it's always going to come back. But I mean, at least with, I mean, I hate, and I cringe when I say this, but look at the Japanese situation. Out of that disaster and death and total destruction, evolved a very strong, economically strong, very prosperous, very independent, a very proud nation, a very educated nation of credible achievers. Japan. I mean, they emerged from that tenfold victorious. So that. But I mean, really, literally, what is the other alternative? I mean, continue to bomb them and you bomb them, you kill a bunch, and then their kids come back to come and slit your throat because you killed their dad. Like,
and you know what? Even by bombing them, we're still losing because how much money are we spending deploying forces halfway around the world? How much money is it costing the United States, Canada, where CF-18s are still there? And yeah, you know what? I've talked about this, and I'm sure. I'm almost certain, no disrespect to our people over there, but I'm sure that our effort is virtually nothing. Like the efforts that the aircraft will be making there are obviously going to pale in comparison to the Russian efforts or the French efforts even. And obviously the Americans, who knows what they're doing there? They're probably dropping bombs, like not on them, but to them. You know, like they're just funding everybody there to perpetuate the war. But it's just like, how much money is it costing us? And so by bankrupting our civilizations, they're still winning.
Well, you know,
it doesn't matter.
I don't know. I guess this is where I might disagree with you just an inkling, Tyler, and I generally agree with you just about on everything. But it is slowing their roll, right? It's slowing their advance. But I think that it's not a sustainable. And I mean, obviously, we have to show solidarity with our other Western, nations that share a similar set of Western values, right? We have to
no, I agree with that. And I
solidarity, right?
That's what I said when Trudeau kind of said that we were going to pull out our aircraft. As I said, our allies, we made that commitment to our allies, and even like our contribution, it might be, somewhat meager compared to what some of our other allies would be bringing to the table. They might still have been counting on that as a part of an overall strategy, and it was total BS to just withdraw abruptly. And so I agree with that, and I do agree that it does accomplish something in that if we blow up a warehouse full of bombs and ammunition, like those are bullets that might not end up in a shipping crate, in Marseille or something that's going to be used to wipe some of our people out. Like, I agree with that, but what I'm saying is, like, in the bigger picture, is it really achieving anything? Like, they're going to get their hands on more bullets and more bombs. It does nothing to defeat their ideology or their will to fight.
Yeah, I don't know how they pay for it, but I mean, I can really only think
U.S. taxpayers.
I don't know. I mean, I would construct a 25-foot wall, a 25-foot high wall with electricity running over the top of it that you touch and you die, and I would just you guys want to have at it, and do what you got to do, but you know what? Again, it comes back to not having the stomach. We wouldn't have the stomach for the massacre that would occur after the fact, and these liberal idiots wouldn't be able to, live with themselves knowing that, regardless that the situation that their actions that they're actually doing now are being more harmful and doing more harm than good. I'm really not optimistic about Europe's outcome. I mean, I'm looking at the influx of people going into these countries. I mean,
I guess the positive out of this is going to be that France is not taking any new refugees, at least for the foreseeable future, and other European states are doing the same thing. They're stopping that inflow because they can't account for who these people are.
Well,
so I mean, it's not a 25-foot wall, but I mean, it might be a step in the right direction that they're at least curbing the flow.
I hear that, but that's political rhetoric. As long as the border guards in Greece, Hungary, Austria, Germany, Italy, if the Italian coast guards are not taking these boats and sending them right back to Libya, they are doing nothing. No matter what, if these people are making landfall, like I'm watching videos of people just walk right past armed border guards in Hungary, and they're just, people don't have the will to stop them. They don't have the will to fight. They're totally weak. Like Sean was saying, they're weak. They're just weak. They don't have the stomach for it. And you know what? Maybe some of these guys, I mean, they know what's happening. They know that they should do something, and they know that they're tasked with that duty. But they know that the population at large is gonna lynch them for it, because they're weak. And it's just like it's like these people are stuck between a rock and a hard place. But all they can do is just stand aside while these guys jump the fence.
Did you guys watch the dynamic entry when in the last the Charlie Hebdo shootings, when the guy was holed up in that, I don't know, it was a theater or it was a restaurant or something, and you got the French guys, and the one French police officer actually starts putting rounds down range when his colleague is like, the guy comes rushing for the door, and the guy's popping off rounds, and they're going, and his buddy's down, like his partner on the dynamic entry's down range, and you could tell that these guys were unprepared, unequipped. The one guy, there's a team, like an emergency response team, holed up outside of the entrance to this whatever it was, and who runs in out of a team of 20 guys? One poor bastard ran in. Yeah. Like, and look, I have many friends that are I've got friends that are Navy SEALs, I've got friends that are JTF. I've got friends that are hardcore, highly trained, killing, operational tactical machines. I am none of those. I am just some idiot. These guys are, weapons in their own right. But it's, and like Tyler said, I think that their forces of order, they're subject to, somebody said that democracy doesn't work, and I actually started to believe that democracy does not work because, they're subject to policy changes. And, look what Pierre Trudeau did to Canada's military. I mean, you can't blame the guys. Like, you can't blame the guys on the ground there or the border guards that are there because, they've got this government that has, doesn't believe in that strength, right? So, and like you say, watching these guys walk right past armed border guards, it's mind blowing to me. Like, it's just, like I say, I don't think. I hate to say this, I really, really do. Europe is doomed. I do not. There are some countries like Norway. I think some of the more pro-gun countries that take a harder stance. Russia is certainly safe. I think some of these. I think we're going to see a rise in Europe, a full swing of this socialist, bleeding heart liberal type mindset, where nationalism is going to rise sharply, and not necessarily
saying that. This thing, it's going to produce another Hitler, and he's going to be radically popular because that's the only alternative, right?
Yeah,
you've either got this bleeding heart socialism where you're just handing your civilization over to people who are like totally alien to you, and they're shooting and killing you and all that. And I mean, that's obviously not all of them, but it doesn't even matter at this point. It's just kind of like the floodgates are open, and Europe is now on a clear-cut path to like irreversible change. Even just demographically, like you were saying, they're simply having more babies. It's gonna happen if things go on unchecked. So yeah, it's gonna give rise to another Hitler, and and the guy's gonna be radically popular, and that's what's going on now. Yeah, like Eastern Europe, which are still recovering from the effects of almost a century of communism. They're poorer than Western nations, and so they're less attractive for the vampires, as I like to call them, people that are going there for the social benefits and everything. So they don't have these demographic problems yet. I recently saw Poland. Polish people have been demonstrating to a greater extent than France and Germans and British people, saying that we don't want anything to do with this. We're in the European Union, but tough titties. Don't give us any refugees. Like, we don't want to deal with.
What we're witnessing now is going to be a turning point. It's going to be a pivotal moment for the European Union. I think what's going to happen, we're going to start seeing nations pull out of the European Union.
Yep.
And I think that we're going to see a rise in nationalism. And I totally agree with Tyler. I think that in one of these European countries, I don't know which one it's going to be, there will be a rise of a person, that a party, a group of people that will not only take control of their own nation. Once that is complete, that person's going to want to be that guy that's going to go through Europe and clean the streets of these people. Yep. And they're teetering on. I don't know. I don't even know if There's one aspect to the Marxism, to the softism, to all this Sophism, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that you've got ISIS there, like a pissed off Chihuahua biting at the ankle of Western nations. I'm not sure that these guys really recognize that there are some people that are still left that will go to extreme lengths to get rid of them, and not only to get rid of them, to exterminate them from the face of the earth. There's some people out there, like, I happen to, every once in a while I'll click on, like I say, I'm a clickbait fanatic, and sometimes I'll click on some of these things, and you've got crusaders, guys that are building these crusade organizations over in Europe, like legitimate crusaders that are just chomping at the bit to get their hands around the necks of these people. And these guys are, the whole Viking Norse, the bearded man that, drinks human blood and, has a belt that he, skulls on, like he wears a skull belt or jawbones or collects eyeballs or something. Like, there's guys out there that are like that, and God forbid if you get one that's articulate, because I totally get. I'm totally on board with that. I think that Europe is facing a crucial period, and if they don't do what needs to be done, there's going to be somewhere out there in Europe, a country somewhere, where one of these guys is gonna make a rise to power, and man, oh man, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, like that, I'm sure Canada will stay out of it to a certain extent, but like just think of the economic devastation that's going to do. We're not a self-sufficient country. We trade with everybody. Just think about the disruption. And of course, as soon as the UK gets involved to some extent, we're going to be involved in some way, shape, or form. You know it. And we're already involved. I mean, we've been attacked.
Well, I mean, our ideologies. I mean, look at I said this to somebody else. These people are our enemies. Okay, these people are not our friends. I'm sorry, but I'm going to be politically incorrect here. These people they do not share. While there are some peaceful people that practice that faith, that's fine by me. I've got no issues with that. So long as you don't want to force your look. When you have an ideology that does not coincide with Western values, and it doesn't. Stop this pussyfooting around bullshit where we're trying to, these apologists and all these people out there trying to apologize for them. Look, in our Western civilization, we value women. We treat women with respect. We don't promote polygamous relationships. We don't promote spousal abuse. We don't promote, these aren't things that are normal for us. We don't believe that you can hit your wife as long as you hit her with a stick that's less than 1 inch in diameter. We don't believe in these things. It's just, it doesn't coincide with who we are as people and things that we value. And they don't, quite frankly, they don't value life the same way that we do. So, to stop this apologetic, apologizing bullshit, look, I don't want them here. Let them stay over there. You've got all these people. You want peace? You really want lasting peace? You want to be a Syrian that loves his nation, that loves his heritage, that loves being Muslim, that wants to live by Muslim customs? Have at it. But get back on a freaking boat, go back there, and do what needs to be done to save your country. Like I said in the beginning of this discussion, if our country was under attack, I would like to think that, despite me being 42 years old and not being able to run as fast as I used to, or be able to march as far as I could, or all these other things, that I would do what I could do. I would do whatever I could offer to be able to defend our country against these invaders. And that's what they are, really. Let's call a spade a spade. These people are invaders. When you walk by a border check and you show total disregard for the law and the rule of the land of the welcoming or the adoptive nation of where you're heading to, and you bypass, that those, whether you agree with the statist part of it or you don't, when you walk past a border guard, that shows total disregard for the welcoming of the host country. Those in my mind are freaking enemies. Those people are enemies. They're not. They're not coming to add value. They're coming to conquer. We're looking at a conquest here.
Well, yeah, it's not migration at that point. It is straight up invasion.
They're invaders.
If you were migrating, you would go through the correct legal process. You would present yourself to customs, and you would adopt your host country. Absolutely. Yeah. And these people are not doing that. This is strictly an invasion.
Now, I'm sure everybody on this panel would agree. If somebody breaks the borders of your home, that you should be free and clear to use whatever force that you deem necessary to end that incursion. And I feel like that principle, it's a principle. It's not just an exception. That applies to your national borders too. These people are straight up violating a known border. And, how else are you to interpret that? They're demonstrating their willingness to violate the laws of the land. So you should react appropriately.
Shoot and kill.
Yeah.
Put them in bags.
Absolutely.
Put them back in bags. I got no problem with that. Look, and you said it perfectly. And it comes again. They're disrespecting the law, they're disrespecting the culture and the principle, but they don't. See, this is the problem. Our laws are not their laws. They don't give a shit about our laws, right? Like they'll come here, they'll bow down, they'll do this, that, and yeah, right, yeah, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day. They're going to remain true to who they are and culturally, and who they are in terms of their family and what's important for them.
There is a term for it too within their faith to appease their enemies and pretend to be their friends as long as it's convenient for them until they get to the point where they can act on their beliefs.
It's like the really simple Canadian example of that is Law 101 in Quebec. Okay, the state put all these laws in place to protect the French language. Okay, they forced French upon schools, they forced French upon corporations, businesses, and all the rest. Signage, they've got this language police. This, I call them Stasi. They go out there and they make sure that English isn't written bigger on street signs and all this other stuff. But what did it do? If you go to Montreal's airport, you're going to hear people speaking in Arabic. You're going to hear people in Italian. You're going to hear people speaking in English. What did all those laws and what all those millions of dollars do to stop these people from speaking a foreign language in Montreal, other than French? It did nothing. Absolutely nothing. All it did was complicate things for the rest of the people that just want to get by, right? So I mean, that goes to show that you're not going to be able. No measure of indoctrination or assimilation will remove somebody's cultural ties to their identity, because that's how they identify as a person. They identify with their faith. They identify with their parents, their family, their friends, and if they're all of the same ilk, then then that's who they're going to identify with. So you're not going to be able to assimilate. Like, the thought of assimilating these people is absolutely ludicrous. Like, that's insane. That's insanity talk when you think, well, we'll just bring them in and we'll assimilate them. Like, you will not assimilate these people, and they have total disregard. I mean, I look what happened in Greece. Greece, the island allows these people to land. Now, if you had done that in like Canada, actually it did happen with the Vietnamese boat people, and they were Canadian military was shooting at the boat people. Like, they would mow them down. I mean, they'd kill you, for God's sakes. Don't bum rush our borders. We're gonna shoot at you and kill you and send you home in a bag. But again, I mean, these border guards, they're victim to budgetary cuts or policy changes. But anybody that comes to a border check and doesn't show good faith, like Tyler says, and respects the laws of the land, of the welcoming or the host country, to me, as an invader, needs to be shot and sent home in a bag. I'm sorry if I'm politically incorrect when I say that. Some of the listeners might find me a little harsh, but I mean, that's how I see it.
Actually, I want to go back to something you said a couple of minutes ago there, Sean, with the apologists and pussyfooting around things, and kind of watching some of this on the news as it unfolded over the weekend, and watching commentary from various political leaders. I almost felt like I was watching a Monty Python sketch. We don't want to name names and speculate on who did this. And ISIS is standing over on the other side of the room going, "It was us. It was ISIS. We did it." And the next talking head on CNN says, "We're not going to speculate on who did this. We don't want to paint everyone with the same brush." And ISIS is standing on the other side of the room going, "Hey, it was us. We just admitted it was ISIS.
It was me.
And yeah,
it was me."
And I feel like I'm watching this Monty Python sketch where on one side it's a different talking head and the camera changes and it's guy in manjamas going, "Yeah, it was ISIS. We did it. We're trying to." And some liberal comes on and says, the liberals like, "Yeah, it was they're a byproduct of their socioeconomic. It's not their religion. It's not. It's a byproduct of our influence in their society, and it's a socioeconomic issue, and we influence them." And the guy in the manjamas is going, "No, seriously, it's in my book. It says I have to do this." No, you don't understand, and it's just your bad interpretation of this. And I feel like I'm watching this, like, I don't understand how the left is so willing to be an apologist for something they had no part in.
Man, Jim.
I'll tell you why. Liberalism. You still laughing about that?
What do you want to call them?
What else are you going to call it? That's right. Liberalism it's a religion. I mean, it's a religion, and it's the same phenomenon when you see like a police officer like straight up murder somebody. And you always have the same old people coming out of the woodwork, making excuses, saying, "Oh, that person just shouldn't have resisted, and then it all would have worked out," or something like that. When maybe the charge or the situation was total BS. They're offering excuses for a particular action that is inexcusable. And when it comes to these liberals, when we're talking about, like, for example, what happened in France, or what has obviously occurred in the UK with the bus and the tube bombings, or 9/11, or what happened in Canada last year, they're always making excuses. It's like when you've got somebody who has a dogmatic belief in a practice, like such as just letting people flood in and that it's all just going to somehow work out, that our cultural greatness will win them over, and they'll just assimilate magically, like that's going to happen. And so when you confront them with these truths, they react with hostility. And so, like one of the primary things that they will do is they'll start attacking you. Like character assassination is a big tactic. They'll try to label you as a racist. When I think we've made it clear that it's not a race thing. Sean Bakley, he's got people of all backgrounds that he knows and cares for, who have come and contributed something of value to the society. It's not something that you can paint with that one blanket brush. We're talking about a particular ideology that is totally hostile and alien to our way of life here, and it needs to be regarded as such. Like, people need to speak of it in clear terms. But these liberals, they'll see things like what happened in Paris, and they'll make excuses to say, well, it's just the radicals, And like Sean, you were saying that it was anywhere from between like 13 and 27% of people that were polled, and these people like supported the Islamic State. Only
Can
about
I vote Goodwin's law, right? Like, only 10% of Germans are Nazis.
That's exactly where I was going with this. Like, when you have a dedicated, tiny group of people, through like the state apparatus, like which is what the Islamic State has, for all intents and purposes, managed to achieve, you can use that apparatus to force people who are ordinarily quite passive to support what you're doing, through taxation or through, just straight up coercion. And so that's what the Germans did. There were people who, maybe they'd hum and haw about particular ideas about the Nazi state, but through the state apparatus, they were forced to do it. And the Islamic State is no different. They hold territory that has like 18 million people. You can do a lot of damage with 18 million people. I don't care how insignificant that number might seem when you compare it to the Americans, 320 some odd million people, or even the French with 65, 66 million people. It's a lot of people, and you could do a lot of damage, as we saw last weekend.
They don't need a lot of people. They're dealing with, like, the Paris thing was a platoon-sized element. You're not dealing with hundreds of thousands of boots on the ground. You're dealing with a dozen moderately well-trained and moderately well-armed insurgents.
It's funny that we talk about that because, for a long time, people talk about the gun lobby and how this relates back to the gun lobby. And, people, when I was vice president of the NFA, would say, well, wouldn't it be great if we had, 150,000 or 250,000 or 300 or half a million members? And sure, that would be great. But I'll tell you what, knowing what I know about the NFA and the actual people that were pulling the weight, it was a very small number. And a very small number of highly committed individuals, motivated individuals, disciplined individuals can achieve unfathomable results for the masses by sheer conviction, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I think that quite frankly that they're unstoppable. And like these guys they're highly committed. Like when you're willing to blow yourself up into hamburger to take out your enemy, that shows a level of commitment that I don't know of any No,
it becomes unmatchable because we have a value in Western society for life that you wouldn't find a person that would go to war for their country from Britain or from Canada or from America that would do that.
Well, I mean, there's been cases of Navy SEALs throwing themselves on grenades and making those sacrifices in combat to save their country.
And making the sacrifice to save
their... No one is going to take up a mission where the mission details, they culminate in, then you blow yourself up.
That's right. And no one from a Western society is going to go to war and don a suicide vest. It's not going to happen. It's not in our national psyche.
Now, with the skills and tools, I mean, it's not like the Islamic State has a space program. I mean, we've got satellite, communication, satellite imagery. We've got air forces that are unrivaled. We've got all this technology and this equipment that we're unwilling to use. But we have all these technological advantages that would make such a sacrifice unnecessary and useless, quite frankly, given the millions of dollars invested in training these people. But these guys, you just pull them out of a crowd and you strap a vest on him and send him on his way. I mean, it's no loss to them. Life is cheap, to them.
Yeah, well, it's a great comparison to that is, you compare the the United States military complex in Vietnam to the Viet Cong that were hiding in pajamas in the jungle. They were armed with nothing more than an AK-47, and they took on the mightiest, greatest military force in the world, and they won. They kicked the Americans' ass in Vietnam, and they did it by guerrilla warfare tactics, and they picked off the Americans at every chance they got. And there was a Vietnamese woman hiding in every village with a knife, getting ready. They'd come in and be handing out, chiclets or pamphlets or flyers or something, and she would run into the crowd with a grenade. I mean, how can you can't win against that type of mindset? You can't.
I mean, you look at the numbers. You look back in history. The Americans lost 65,000 servicemen over there, and the Vietnamese that they were fighting might have lost 1 million, 1.2, 1.5 million people. They still won. They still got their way. They still established their state. It doesn't matter. The numbers don't matter when you're facing a committed enemy like that. Like when the Nazis went into Russia, the Nazis were mowing Russians down at ratios of like 8-1, 9-1, and the Russians still won because they were committed to the victory.
Oh yeah,
to a greater extent than the Germans were.
Yeah, you can pile up the bodies when those people are committed. When you're dealing with a committed human being that is been brought to the point, and a great example, Tyler, with the Russians in World War II. I mean, these people were dying, they were starving to death, they were going through incredible hardships, and there was nothing left. The only thing that was left for them was to fight, and to fight till the bitter end, and to the last man standing.
Very interesting part of history, because some of the first descriptions of post-traumatic stress disorder come from the Germans, who were literally going insane from the sheer human carnage that they were having to inflict just to hold the line.
Yep. Yeah, I know it's, and I think that like you say, I think I think Western society's totally lost the stomach for that. Like my grandfather, come back to my grandfather's point about losing 1 million men. We hear. And look, I totally respect our military. I compare my great-grandfather's service in World War I, where the Crown sent him off to some field in France, in the trench, and you went and you came home either in a body bag or when the war was done. My grandfather fought for like 4 years. And
there were no 6-month, 9-month, 12-month tours.
And post-traumatic stress disorder is real. But I mean, but it just goes to speak to when Canadians see Canadian bodies coming off planes, the public, because of the liberal media and the way that they spin it, quickly loses its appetite for any type of conflict or confrontation, or to do what's necessary for the victory, right? Yeah. Whereas our ancestors would go to extreme lengths to win.
Let me add something to that. I grew up in Oakville, Ontario, and the town newspaper used to publish the facts and figures from that particular day in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. And you'd look at some of these stats, and they would say, like, on this day, 174 Canadians were killed. And just like in our total 10 years in Afghanistan, we lost 154, 156.
156.
And that's considered by Canadians today like an enormous sacrifice. And of course, individual lives are worth no more, no less than what they used to be. But Canadians as a society have no idea what national sacrifice is.
No,
today.
They
have no concept.
Modern Canadian is so out of touch with what we went through 100 years ago.
But you remember, guys. Here's the thing, and this comes back to the same point that we've been making. That's cultural Marxism in its finest. They don't want that national identity. They don't want that nationalism. They want to rewrite our history books. They don't want us to remember. They don't want us to know about the 50, 60, the one battle of, I don't know which battle it was, 12,000 Canadians died in one battle.
Like Passchendaele?
It was Passchendaele, I believe. Yeah.
Or the Somme, maybe.
Or the Somme.
Yeah. Tyler's right. It was the Somme. 10 or 11,000, 12,000 Canadians died in one shot.
I believe on the first day, the Newfoundland Regiment, which obviously was not a part of Canada at the time, they lost 800 and some odd men out of a total battalion strength of 974. Yeah, if I'm screwed on my military terminology, I'm sorry, but it was staggering losses. Only 70 some odd guys were fit to report for duty the second day.
And that's why they got this bullshit out there. These fucking idiots. Sorry for the language, but I have to say it. With this white poppy bullshit, They don't want.
I can't stand that fucking thing.
No, me neither. It makes me want to fucking puke. But that's what they do. They want to rewrite history. They don't want us to remember any of that stuff because they want to get rid of people like us. They want to get rid of people that take a certain pride in the sacrifices that were made 100 years ago by my ancestors, your ancestors. I had a great uncle that got blown up in Dunkirk. Half of his body got blown off. He left it in the field over there. They sewed him back up, and he lived the rest of his life with steel plates inside of him. But those were real people, real family members, real family histories. And the liberals, they want to get rid of that from our history. They want to eliminate that. The statues, the epitaphs, the red poppies, all this stuff. They want to get rid of it. It doesn't fit their narrative, right?
Yeah, my grandfather, he was a paratrooper in Korea. He got shot for his trouble. I like to tell people, my grandfather jumped out of planes to fight communists. So that's how evil it was. But he got shot for his trouble, and he lived. He lived long enough, not long enough for me to ever have met him, unfortunately. But there were great sacrifices made, and if as long as we're valuing the sacrifices made 2 generations ago, why not roll that back to like 1452, when Germans and French people and English people were dying by the hundreds and thousands at the gates of Vienna trying to hold the Muslims back, or Charlemagne. For example, like why draw the line at an arbitrary point in history where people might conceivably be still alive, or where it was photographed, or where there's footage? Like there's meaningful sacrifices made in history that have meaningful consequences even today in our society, hundreds of years later. And I really take huge issue with people picking and choosing what's worth remembering and what's not. And because we all learn this shit. I mean, even I hope, I don't know, I've been out of school for a little while, but we all learn this stuff in school. But it's just kind of brushed over. It's like they're not teaching it with like the gravity that it deserves. Like, hey, this is a real pivotal moment in your country's history, because if we lost this battle, Canada wouldn't exist. It probably would have been colonized by the Chinese about 50 years later. For example, like these are meaningful events that led to things being the way they are now.
Well, I think that what it points to, Tyler, and you make a great point, is that it really points to the demise of Western society and Western culture, and that's exactly what's occurring. Since the time of the Magna Carta, and before that, what made where did the Western civilization come from? Where did Western culture come from? If you look back through history, and I'm no historian by any stretch of the term. But I do know a little bit about where this all came from, and quite frankly, we are no longer those people. We don't possess the qualities that we once possessed to build this great civilization, right? And all civilizations at one point come to an end. Unfortunately, that's the reality. No matter how hard we try to grip onto it, I'm not very optimistic about the future. I'm really not. Sometimes I sit and I quietly reflect, and unfortunately, I said this to my wife one time, and she got really upset with me, and I almost regret having kids because I don't know what I don't know what we're like. What are we leaving them? Like, what mess are we going to put them in?
Well, sorry, just to go back to what I said. Correction on that date. It was 1529, not whatever I said, 1452, I think. But I haven't had children yet. But I look forward to having children because, when I get into my older age, how would I be able to look back on the life I lived and say I let the world be inherited by these savages? You gotta do something.
That's also a fair assessment. I'm kind of the same cloth, but in the sense that sometimes you reflect on the depths, the situation that we're living, the world that we're living in today, and you look at that and you think, what really are we leaving our kids, right? But at the same time, at least they can look back, someday farther down the road and maybe look at some of the things that I've done or said, or some of the things that I've tried to do, and say, well, my dad at least did something. He tried to stand up for something and do something right, and tried to preserve something, some notion of,
Well, it's interesting, in this this era of social media, where pretty much every position and opinion you've ever had, at least since the birth of Facebook, has been documented. Your kids are going to be able to go back and say, my father was a man of principle, consistent throughout the years. He never relented, no matter what. It didn't matter. And probably once this recording is out on the internet, it's never going to go away. It'll be on multiple backup servers and whatever. And somebody 40 years from now might be able to view it and say that these guys stood for something.
Yeah, I think I can only hope. I mean, this whole thing has taken a huge toll on my own personal life. Like it's, I can't be over there. I'm too old now to go over there and start shooting, setting rounds down range at people. But if I look at the sacrifice that my father's father was in the Korean War as well, and my grandfather was in World War II, my great grandfather was in World War I. Like their whole family made those sacrifices, and I look at the monumental, like the sheer importance and monumental grandiose of the sacrifice that those generations made, and I always felt kind of inadequate. Like I don't know if that makes sense. I always felt inadequate when I was talking to Michael Loberg about this the other day, the lawyer from Calgary, great guy.
Yeah.
Him and I had a discussion about this, and my grandfather was always kind of like that bar, that measuring bar, or that mentor, that kind of that was what I was always trying to achieve. I was always trying to kind of live up to him and to live up to his expectations and to kind of be like him and kind of share the same values, and and at one point I felt kind of deeply inadequate in terms of what those people, my forefathers, did before me, and what I had actually done with my life. What did I achieve? What did I had done to protect our freedoms, to protect our liberties, to to do things that make sure that these Western values that my forefathers, your forefathers, and their forefathers before them fought, died, and bled for just aren't evaporated and just shunned off into some closet somewhere because some fucking idiot liberal wants to re-engineer us.
Yeah.
I felt almost like I've got to do something, and if I can do this, I suppose, then maybe for the little that it is, at least I'm doing something. And would it be easier to cut my arm off and make me bleed for it? Probably. It would probably be a lot less pain. It would be one shock of pain rather than a very slow and painful demise like I sometimes feel like I'm going through. But
Yeah.
at least like you say, Tyler, we're doing something, right? And I mean, I'm not always right. A lot of times I'm probably wrong, but I feel that sense of duty, that sense of responsibility to Canadians, to good law-abiding people, to just people in general, and to democracy, and to the way we live and the things that we enjoy. I feel a deep obligation to at least do something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't think I'd describe myself as one of the guys that's chomping at the bit to go over there and start stringing people up. But I'm obviously outraged at what's happened in Paris, and I'm certainly not hesitant to defend myself and people that I care about. The laws be damned, whatever they might be.
Yeah, I'm with Tyler on that. I'm too old and jaded to try and go back into the military and be willing to do a deployment and go over and play in somebody else's sandbox. But God help the guy that wants to come and play in mine.
Yeah, don't come.
When I was younger, I contemplated joining the military. I contemplated going to Royal Military College in Kingston, and my father talked me out of it. You know what he said to me? He said, "You don't want to end up in some fucking sandbox fighting somebody else's war." And
that's exactly it. That's where I feel at this point is I want nothing to do with that. But bring them over here and play in our sandbox, and that's not going to be a thing that anybody wants. There's enough of us that are armed in this country, and there's enough of us that are not going to tolerate any level of bullshit from somebody invading it.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, I mean, we criticize these people for trying to project their way of life to other parts of the world, and I feel like that principle should apply at home too. We have our own way of doing things over here. By and large, for the most part, Canadians agree on some fundamental issues, such as like women's rights, like Sean was saying. And I don't really feel like we should be in the business of flying across the world and exporting at the end of a barrel of a gun our way of doing things. Like if our way is objectively better, then they will come to that realization and change. Let's just focus on continuing to build upon the greatness that our forefathers have managed to achieve here. And that's kind of the ultimate irony, in that our forefathers were so radically successful in creating this just thriving economy, carving existence out of this land. And they managed to create a society so prosperous and so safe that the future generations didn't need to be men to maintain it. And that's kind of the situation that we've inherited. And now the wolves are at the gates, and it's dramatically threatened. And there are only a precious few people left who are kind of willing to do what it takes to keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, excellent point. You know, that's an absolutely excellent point. It's an excellent analogy of the situation as well. You know, for me personally, I was 18 or 19 years old. I was in the militia, and I spent a little bit of time in the militia in the Windsor Regiment down in Windsor, and it was at the turning point when the Persian Gulf War came about. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not. Maybe you were a little bit too young, but they were actually talking about sending Canadian combat soldiers into Iraq on a larger scale. Now, we had operatives there. There were people already in the military that were operating in Kuwait, that were fighting with the Americans, but they were talking about actually sending over armored corps, and like there was a contingency of people that we were going to send over there. And I actually went to go and to join up because I wanted to go to Iraq, is where I wanted to go. And ultimately, at the last minute, they said that they were only going to use Canadian pilots, and there was no chance at that time. And I wasn't interested. I've never agreed with the UN. I believe that they're just nothing more than an impotent, group of liberals that make themselves feel better by throwing, blue helmets on, being witnesses to massacres and to horrific, crimes. But I didn't associate myself with the UN. I wanted to be part of a national role of defending our values, and it just didn't work out. I couldn't go. But if I was, I agree with Tyler in the sense that, do I believe that there should be national firearms training for every man, woman, and child in this country that is able-bodied and fit? Absolutely. Do I believe that we should be preparing ourselves in the eventuality that we have somebody come knock on our door that wishes to do us harm in our own land? Absolutely. Do I want to be able to be effectively prepared to face that enemy when he shows up at my front door? Absolutely. Do I want my children, my wife, and my friends and my neighbors to be able to effectively dispatch an enemy of that proportion that comes here to kill me? Yes, absolutely. And are we ready for that? No. Will we be ready for that? No. The liberals, talking again with their gun control bullshit, they want to further weaken us in terms of the national civilian ability to effectively defend our own lives, property, and loved ones. I'm disgusted by it. I'm even considering going to the New Hampshire Free State Project, if you can imagine that. I would never even be able to fathom leaving Canada. It's a heartbreaking situation. But at one point when I don't know if the value system that we're now, we're fighting for it. There's guys like us out there, and go across social media, and there's tons and thousands of people that support our side of the opinion that remain silent, and all due respect to those folks as well. But they're out there, they're supporting us, they're getting involved, they're educating themselves, they're doing all these great things. They're trying to get new people involved in firearms ownership, and that stuff's great. But at one point, what's happening right now is not my Canada. It's not the Canada that I came to love. That I felt deeply, that I feel patriotically deeply attached to. I don't go to Montreal anymore and feel that that pride of and I hate to say that because it breaks my heart to say it, but it's we're not changing in a positive light at all, and some people out there, the liberals or whoever, I'm sure that there's some of our enemies actually probably watching this, and if they're not now, they will.
Hope so.
Well, once they find out that probably Tyler and myself are on here, they're certainly gonna.
Oh yeah, they're interested.
Oh, they're gonna be showing up. They think that we're a threat. That CSIS document that came out that remember we talked about this last couple weeks ago that we're more extreme and more dangerous and more we're worse than the Syrian terrorists that could show up on our doorstep. Like that's the type of mindset. And you know what? And these are the people that could control the government, right? These are the people that are controlling the government right now. So it's easy for them to convince others in Parliament, public safety, justice, wherever they need to be, to pass legislation to basically, go on a witch hunt for people like us, right? Like I've had some, like you guys, we talked about this a couple weeks ago too. Some of the weird situations, the drones flying out in front of my house, the drone got caught in the tree in front of my house, the drone that was flying by my house, like all this weird shit that's happened. Am I going to become an enemy of the state, or is Andrew going to become an enemy of the state? Is Tyler going to become an enemy of the state? Where,
if you're not on a watch list, you're not trying hard enough.
I'll tell you, Andrew is an enemy of podcast etiquette because he hasn't muted his phone.
I'm sorry, I'm on call at work, and it's terrible. Everybody missed it earlier. I actually muted it and took a work call. But,
no, I saw that.
On that, let's actually do rapid fire and start wrapping up for tonight. So rapid fire is our listener feedback show. We'll start with the YouTubes tonight. And we'll start with Swampland Films, who agrees with us that if terrorism is coming from the Middle East, the USA has created it. Okay, we're in agreement about that. He also has an anecdote that he shares with us. A girl in my Canadian history class in grade 10 actually asked our teacher one day if the world had color before they invented color TV. And to that girl, we'd like to say no. No, the world was entirely viewed in black and white. Humans evolved the ability to see color after the color television was invented. Sorry for your schoolmate.
You can't make that up. You can't make that up.
You can't make that, but there are...
That stuff up, no.
Well, you know what? Since we're doing fun high school anecdotes, a girl in one of my English lit classes asked if Hitler was from Australia.
Ooh.
Because she didn't understand the difference between the continent and the southern hemisphere and the country next to Germany.
I have had people ask me what language they speak in Austria before.
Okay.
But I guess that might be a little bit more excusable.
Maybe. Okay, so that's it for the YouTube feedback. We've also got Facebook feedback from Manuel. He says he's watching the podcast and he's really liking the topics. And he's got a comment that he thinks we need mandatory basic military... He thinks we need mandatory basic military training for everyone in Canada after high school, and that would get rid of a lot of problems that we currently have in our society. It would be awesome if you could touch on that topic. And I'd be happy to do that for a future show. I mean, Sean's already kind of alluded to it in the last couple of minutes.
I'm not into the whole coercion, we're going to force you we're going to do it by force. I think there has to be a way to bring people around to some type of voluntarism where it becomes very appealing for them to do that, right?
Well, my high school was built during the Korean War. It was built in 1951, and it has a rifle range in it. It's totally unused, or at least there's no reason to believe it is now, but it certainly was unused when I was going to it. But obviously, back in the day, they were teaching kids to shoot at least on 22s. And for all I know, I don't know anything about the program, but it may have been compulsory, it may have been voluntary. I don't know, but I certainly think that Canada, despite what the Liberals have managed to do to it, still remains a nation of hunters and people who enjoy the outdoors. And it's realistic to think that you might be out, in the wilderness somewhere, and you might come across a lost or discarded rifle, and kind of as the very most basic means of safety, you should know how to make the rifle safe. And I think at least that much should be taught in schools, basic firearms safety. But I do think that certainly schools, at least that are equipped for it now, should offer some sort of firearms course, even if it's an after-school thing, if they have the facilities for it, just as a course, extra credit, whatever. I mean, I certainly would encourage my children to do it. Not that they would need it, because they'll be shooting, quite at a young age. But
absolutely.
But it struck me as a damn shame. I mean, I didn't get into guns until I was about 18, 19. So I was out of high school, but I always thought it was really cool that my school, when you look at the fire plan, the fire escape plan showed the gun range on it. And I was like, where the hell is this thing? But it was all boarded up. You couldn't get into it. And I just thought, what a waste. All the guys I knew, they would have been totally down for it. Everybody thought it was cool. They'd love to get into it. But that just goes to show, one of the things Sean touched on earlier is those options are intentionally removed from young, developing children.
Well, but I think that we do have one advantage if we did in fact implement some type of training through schools. I mean, think about this: the PlayStation kids. But I would want them to train on AR-15s, right? and you would sign up voluntarily, man. They'd be coming in droves.
You wouldn't be able to keep enough ammunition in stock.
No, absolutely not.
Have to build an ammunition factory to be able to supply all these kids with. So I think that there's something that could be done there, and I wholeheartedly support that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to see it.
Let's throw that in a topic for a future episode then, because I'd actually like to spend a lot of time on that. And we're already way over for today.
On Friday night, me and Matt, we recorded my podcast on the events in Paris, and we recorded for 3.5 hours. So no need to feel bad about this one running long.
Yeah, no,
you're not alone.
We're going to make this twofer.
Yeah, we're in some strange times for sure. What else have you got on there on feedback from people that are listening?
That's pretty well it. We've got we went through YouTube, we went through the Facebook. I do have an update from an email from last week. I have been in touch with Edward TDV Press Pass, and we may be able to get him onto a future show. And that's all I have for feedback. Tyler, if people want to stay in touch with you, the best way to get you is still Facebook?
Yeah, you can hit me on Facebook. I definitely make no effort to hide who I am. Tyler Gerard. You can find me on Facebook. I actually had a couple folks add me after the last episode I participated in, episode 2. And you can check out the podcast that I do, the International Liberty Death Podcast, or on iTunes, whatever. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, doesn't matter. That's about it. I'm not really participating in anything else right now. Obviously, my activities with the NFA are suspended. But I am exploring other options for the moment because it doesn't matter. As we discuss these issues in the podcast, I got to contribute something meaningful to the efforts that we all agree on. Really, I mean, we got to, if only for what we've discussed on this episode in particular, gun rights are important. I mean, the shooting sports be damned, hunting be damned. Just on the matter, the fundamental freedom of self-defense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the core of it for me, really.
No, I really die for it. So, I mean, it goes beyond. I totally agree. I wanted to just throw something you guys here. I wanted to get your opinion about this. I've been thinking about. I want your opinion on this. I know that we're on the air, and maybe I should do this after the show, but I still want to do it. What do you guys think about a lobbyist for hire?
I support that.
Like a guy like me that creates, I don't know even if I have the technical skills to create something that I could, people give me, a donation of $5 and then I go lobby on their behalf type thing.
Well, that's not the same as any other lobbyist. It's just this way you're more grassroots. You're not bound to some corporate money bag.
I don't know. Would that be something that would be viable, do you guys think?
I think so. I mean, I think if you've ever listened to my podcast or I've been paid any attention to some of the things that I throw out there on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you know that I'm very much pro-market, and that's about as free market as you can get.
Yeah, you're dealing directly with consumers. That's
okay. Interesting. So I talked to
definitely be in support of that. I mean, Sean, based on everything you've had to say on this episode of the podcast, everything that I've known you to say, and my other experiences with you on the other the premiere episode of this podcast, like I know that you're a genuine guy, and I know that you and I see eye to eye on pretty much everything, and I'd be happy to support you in your efforts. In fact, I'm going to go buy one of those caps on your website if they're available.
They're available.
Probably tomorrow. So.
Sorry, guys, about the shameless plug, but God, sales aren't good right now, so I'm.
No, actually, on that topic, Sean, where can everybody find you? Shamelessly plug away.
Yeah, Spath the Tactical. I call God, I feel horrible. Oh, I feel like a hyena around the carcass or a vulture or something, but whatever. I'll just take a bite. www.spathtactical.com. We go check out our products there. Our website. Again, you can reach me at sean.bevins@spathtactical.com. Reach out to me on Facebook. Call me. You can call my business number. That number. You can call me directly at 1-877-902-4779, or you can call me on my cell phone 819-314-5191. Please do not call in the middle of the night or drunk call me.
You heard it here first, folks.
No drunk dialing, please.
Heard it here. Sean calls at 3 in the morning.
Flash mob Sean, 3 in the morning.
I'm not going to be happy, I'll tell you.
Well, our giant fan base, I'm sure, will respect your desire to sleep at 4 in the morning.
Fair enough.
So with that, I'm, of course, as I am every week, as we discussed last week, I am still Andrew. And you can find my work on everydaytactical.com. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter at evtactcool. For the podcast, you can get to us at www.canadianpatriotpodcast.com or facebook.com/canadianpatriotpodcast. Feedback for the show can be reached through the website, canadianpatriotpodcast.com/feedback, or you can send us an email, feedback@canadianpatriotpodcast.com. Normally, this is the part of the show where I would remind our listeners that you are the true north, strong and free. On our special Paris terrorism episode this week, I'd actually like to remind you that praying for peace doesn't do sweet fuck all. If you want peace, prepare for war.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Thanks for having me again.
No, absolutely. It's been a blast. I appreciate you both being on.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.